After losing my memory in a car accident, my assistant rushed over to explain. Sir, President Yan cares about you a great deal. President Yan immediately chartered a flight back from abroad. She only went to the company after confirming you had no external or internal injuries. Anyway, I wasn't there, so I just let her spin her tall tales. A plastic wife who hadn't come to see me for 3 days, hadn't made a single phone call, and hadn't sent a single message was somehow being painted as a deeply devoted, brainless romantic. It was enough to make one laugh. Yuko Cho looked at me, sleeping with my eyes closed, and the speech she had so carefully prepared suddenly became completely useless. Sir doesn't seem to believe it, but everything she said is true. President Yan was so worried about Sir, I just don't know why President Yan hasn't come to the hospital to see Sir. Yuko Cho let out a silent sigh and quietly retreated from the hospital room. The moment she turned around, she saw her own big boss right there. Aren't you going in to see Sir? Yuko Cho couldn't help but feel that the flustered Yan who had rushed into the hospital on the first day of the car accident was fake. Maybe it was President Yan's twin sister, for all she knew, the woman asked in a deep voice. Yuko Cho wrung her brains, finally closed her eyes, and blurted out, Sir is being extremely quiet. Ruka-yan inexplicably understood Yuko Cho's meaning. Her expression froze slightly. Has he never cried? Yuko Cho shook her head vigorously in reply. President Yan had told her beforehand, the moment Sir cries, call and report immediately. Obviously, President Yan had been all set to come and coax Sir, but as it turned out, Sir wasn't crying, leaving President Yan with no chance to coax him at all. Ruka-yan looked at the tightly shut hospital room door. He's that angry? Yuko Cho rolled her eyes internally. You went off to abroad to accompany your husband's younger brother on your 3rd wedding anniversary. How could Sir not be angry? If not for that, Sir wouldn't have been so sleep-deprived that he lost focus while driving out of his own garage, giving himself a concussion. This was all the karma your honorable self brought upon yourself. Ruka-yan looked at the hospital room door behind Yuko Cho and finally pushed it open to walk inside. She knows what I'm angry about, but she really only loves me. She never loved my younger brother. I wasn't actually asleep, because someone had been making a phone call right in my adjoining room. Even though the voice was very low, it was noisy enough to keep me from sleeping. Just as the call finally ended, someone else entered my hospital room. It wasn't Yuko Cho, but a tall, upright man. I asked with a trace of confusion, Who are you? Ruka-yan looked at me. Even back when she first went to my family for our arranged marriage, I had never looked at her with such an unfamiliar gaze. Ruka-yan suddenly panicked a little. She sat down beside me and called out. Ruka-yan took hold of my rough, large hand. I have nothing with your younger brother, Chusei. A flash of coldness slid through my eyes. So she was that plastic wife of mine, Ruka-yan, the CEO of the Yan Group, trending all over the hot searches. Still, she didn't actually think I would believe that, did she? Ever since I woke up from my car accident, she hadn't come to the hospital for 3 days, hadn't called me once, and hadn't sent me a single text, while hot searches of her and my younger brother Chusei were everywhere in the skies. Did she think I wouldn't know anything just because I was in the hospital? Yuko Cho didn't dare confiscate my phone. I knew everything I needed to know. While other people wanted to enjoy the blessings of multiple partners, she wanted to keep both brothers in her harem, coming back to coax the older brother at home. Truly, it was utterly disgusting. I slowly pulled my hand out from the woman's palm. The doctor should have told you, so I remember even less about how the two of you hooked up behind my back. Ruka-yan held my hand with some panic. From beginning to end, I've only ever loved you alone. There's nothing improper between Chusei and me. I gave a faint smile. You can't prove your own innocence. Or perhaps you and him truly are innocent, because he is the white moonlight in your heart. Ruka-yan's face darkened, and she said with some anger, That's enough. As expected, I hit right where it hurts. I forcefully shook off her hand. I don't know you right now. Please get out. Married for 3 years, I had never treated her like this before. In the past, whenever I looked at her, my eyes always carried a glimmer of light and a touch of shyness. Could he really have amnesia? She refused to believe it. You're lying to me. Ruka-yan raised her hand, bracing her other hand on the hospital bed behind me, trying to force a kiss. I used all my strength to push her away. While Ruka Yan was still getting emotional, with a sharp crack, I dealt her a fierce slap right across the face. Ruka Yan was a pampered darling of the heavens by nature. Ever since she took the reins of the Yan group, no one had ever dared to raise their voice in front of her, let alone experience something like being slapped across the face. Yet my disposition was soft. For 3 years of marriage, I had always been gentle with her, never even raising my voice. And now, simply because of a kiss, I had given her a solid, resounding slap. Ruka Yan stared at me dead on, as if trying to peer straight through my soul. Yet I, who had always possessed a mild and soft disposition, felt completely unfearing of her in this moment. I even pulled a tissue from the bedside table and slowly wiped my lips. Ruka Yan was pierced to the heart by my gesture of disgust, tears welling up as her heart bled. "He's disgusted by me." After finishing wiping the moisture from my lips, I pointed toward the hospital room door and said coldly, "Get lost out of here." Ruka Yan didn't know how she managed to walk out of the hospital room, but she knew that under a gaze like mine, she was terrified that I would grow even more disgusted with her. After Ruka Yan left, the more I thought about it, the more disgusted I felt. I simply got out of bed, went to the bathroom to brush my teeth meticulously, and then climbed back into the hospital bed. I searched online about the 3-year marriage between Ruka Yan and me, only to find that even the uproarious hot searches from the past 3 days had completely vanished without a trace. A trace of icy mockery flickered through my eyes. Sure enough, they moved fast. Soon after, I noticed there was also a secondary burner account on my phone. I switched over to that burner account, and diary entry after diary entry pierced my eyes. I opened the first entry. On my wedding night with Ruka Yan, she was called away by my younger brother Chusei, and for an entire month straight during that period, Ruka Yan didn't come back. Afterward, Ruka Yan took me to the hospital for blood tests, and when the doctor said my health was fine, I saw her visibly heave a sigh of relief. At that moment, I suddenly believed what Chusei had said about why she married me. After that, I spent a whole day reading through every single diary entry from the past 3 years until I flipped to the very last one, which chillingly read, "I want to commit suicide a little bit." The date was from a week ago. I gripped my phone tightly. That was when I realized that, besides being a nominal Mr. Yan, Chusei and I were actually twin brothers. I was born 5 minutes before Chusei. However, Chusei had been in poor health since childhood. At age 1, he was diagnosed with aplastic anemia and required long-term blood transfusions to alleviate his condition. To top it off, both Chusei and I had rare blood types, while my body was exceptionally healthy. Thus, I became Chusei's walking blood bank. After giving birth to Chusei and me, my mother, Manhwa, could no longer conceive. Therefore, Chusei and I had no younger brothers or sisters, only 3 older sisters. But because Chusei had been frail and sickly since childhood and was the youngest brother in the family, the 3 older sisters had eyes only for Chusei. I gave a self-deprecating laugh. In the Chu family, I was simply an extra. Perhaps my only use was serving as Chusei's mobile blood bank. I opened my phone, flipped through my contacts list, and blocked everyone completely. Before cleaning house, I specifically looked back at historical chat logs. Seeing how my past self had acted like a pathetic, simping doormat, caring for my parents and 3 older sisters, answering their every call, running errands left and right for this family of my wife's side, and even sending them money. I raised my hand and dealt myself a loud, ringing slap to the cheek. Despicable. I felt as though I couldn't even feel the burning sting on my face. In the end, the only person I left unblocked was someone named Tatsuya Ye. Because our final chat logs consisted of him scolding me, he scolded me for being a brainless romantic, for losing myself over a woman. The very last message read, "Shuyan, I never want to be friends with you again, because I'm afraid I'll be angered to death by you. Unless you run into some life or death emergency where you need my help, don't ever contact me again." That final sentence, ending with 9 exclamation marks, was enough to demonstrate the author's utter exasperation. I quietly stared at the screen for a moment, the corners of my lips curving upward. My past self wasn't completely left with nothing. I still had a friend like this. My finger flicked slightly and I tapped the voice call option. Before long, he picked up. "What is it?" His tone wasn't good, even carrying a hint of heat. I explained softly, "I got amnesia. Looking at the chat logs on my phone, it feels like you're the only one who ever treated me well. Tatsuya Yi lost his composure. You got into a car accident and got amnesia too? Send me the hospital address, floor, and room number right now. So much for the man who had previously laid down harsh ultimatums never to contact him again. I replied softly in agreement. After ending the voice call, I sent over my current location. Meanwhile, over at the Yan group, Ruka Yuelan hurried into the president's office. Big sister, what do you mean by brother-in-law slapping you? How could brother-in-law possibly slap you? Remembering my cold, disgusted gaze, Ruka Yan slowly spoke up. He has amnesia. Ruka Yuelan suddenly glanced at her older sister's pretty lips. Knowing her big sister inside and out, she definitely wouldn't easily believe that I had amnesia, so Ruka Yan raised a hand to press against her heavy, aching chest, asking with a somewhat dazed and uncomprehending expression, "He hates me. Why would he hate me?" Clearly, in the past, he used to adore her so much. Every night he would wait for her to come home, brew soup with his own hands, and watch as she finished every last drop, a look of sweetness and joy welling up in the depths of his eyes. Every night we would sleep holding each other. We were so happy. Ruka Yuelan wasn't in a position to judge the truth of the matter either. Brother-in-law's amnesia should be temporary, right? What did the doctor say? Ruka Yan's brow relaxed slightly. The doctor said, Ruka Yuelan instantly let out a sigh of relief. Once brother-in-law recovers his memories, everything will be fine. Ruka Yuelan's explanation caused Ruka Yan's expression to soften slightly. At that moment, her phone rang. It was a call from her assistant, Yuko Cho. Ruka Yan answered immediately. What is it? Yuko Cho said with some helplessness. Mr. Tatsuya Ye came to the hospital to visit Sir, and now Sir is asking me to handle his discharge paperwork for him. Sir's attitude is extremely resolute, and I can't talk him out of it. Ruka Yan was silent for a few seconds. I'm coming right over. Half an hour later, just as Ruka Yan and Ruka Yuelan arrived at the door of my hospital room, they heard Tatsuya Ye shouting angrily inside, What right does she have to forbid you from being discharged? Is she planning to keep you locked up in a hospital room forever? Ruka Yan's expression darkened as she pushed open the door to the room. Because Kozue's body hasn't fully recovered yet, he can't be discharged. Tatsuya Ye turned his head, and upon seeing Ruka Yan, he cursed angrily. I've already asked the doctor, and the doctor said Kozue's body has zero problems whatsoever. Ruka Yan furrowed her brow slightly. She genuinely disliked this Tatsuya Ye. Clearly, Kozue belonged to her, yet this guy Tatsuya Ye was always trying to snatch him away, and even used her exclusive nickname for him. Ruka Yan raised her gaze to look at him. Kozue has amnesia, didn't you know? Why would Tatsuya Ye know Kozue was in the hospital? That must mean Kozue told him. If Kozue really has amnesia, Tatsuya Ye burst out laughing on the spot. Ha ha ha! Isn't this fantastic? Kozue can finally forget all the unhappy things, and you, this trashy woman, will never have a way to hurt Kozue again. Ruka Yuelan idolized her big sister above all else. How could she tolerate Tatsuya Yi standing right in front of her cursing her big sister out? Where do you get the guts to curse my big sister? What, is your big sister the Buddha? Back when Tatsuya Yi got married? No, wait. How much Tatsuya Yi used to like the Yan sisters back then matched how much he despised the Yan sisters now. Two absolute trash women. Tatsuya Ye said with a cold, mocking laugh. Look at what Kozue was like when he first married your big sister, and what he's like 3 years later. Do you dare say it isn't because of your big sister? The heavens must have eyes that Kozue didn't end up as a ghost of the Yan family. Scumbag, boundaryless, cheating woman. Ruka Yuelan was so angry her face turned livid, yet when it came to me, she truly didn't have half a rebuttal to offer. In truth, Big Sister treated Chu Yuan impeccably. Their entire Yan family knew it, but not a single person in the Yan family could explain what on earth was going on between Big Sister and that Chusei. She had asked Big Sister before, but Big Sister told her to mind her own business. Later on, she just resigned herself to it. Maybe he was just a close male confidant. In any case, Big Sister could never betray brother-in-law. Ruka Yan said in a deep voice, Kozue, I didn't cheat. I've explained it to you many times. Chusei and I are completely innocent. I never liked Chusei, nor have I ever done anything to betray you. Not cheating? Do you want me to print out a checklist for you to jog your memory? Although Tatsuya hated me for lacking a spine, he wasn't indifferent to what happened between me and Ruka-yan. Every single time Ruka-yan trended on hot searches with Chusei. Of course, maybe you're telling the truth. You didn't physically cheat. Tatsuya seemed to remember something and let out another cold laugh. You merely cheated mentally. The first time I broke down and wept bitterly in front of him was half a year after becoming Mr. Yan. It was precisely then that he found out I, this Mr. Yan, had always been nothing more than a nominal husband. Such a kind and gentle Kozue of his. Such a kind and gentle Kozue who had been mistreated by his family since childhood, thinking he had found salvation only to realize he had stepped into yet another abyss. And yet, the woman inside this abyss was someone Chuyan himself had loved. No matter how hard he tried to persuade me, he couldn't get me to leave Ruka-yan. Eventually, when he could no longer tolerate Ruka-yan's frequent cheating hot searches, and right as he was on the verge of vomiting blood from anger one more time, he hardened his heart and cut ties with me. Without saying a word, Ruka-yan never once looked at Tatsuya. Her gaze remained locked onto my face, yet it filled her with an unprecedented sense of panic. Tatsuya pointed at Ruka-yan and roared, "No! If not, would you have abandoned Kozue on your wedding night to go see Chusei? On your wedding anniversary, you left Kozue all alone at home. Kozue's car accident was entirely because of you." Ruka-yan covered her mouth, still staring at me. But this time, the hospital room once again plunged into an eerie silence. Ruka-yuelan looked back and forth, finally confirming one thing. Brother-in-law really seemed to have amnesia. Never mind big sister panicking. In 3 years, she had never seen brother-in-law act this cold toward their Yan family. Ruka-yuelan attempted to smooth things over and break the bizarre silence. "Big sister? She actually?" However, I cut her off. "I am leaving the hospital." Clearly, I had no intention of listening to any further explanations. What I had seen and heard over the past 3 days had already solidified my verdict in my heart regarding my marriage with Ruka-yan and Ruka-yan as a person. After a long silence, Ruka-yan let out a soft breath. "Then I'll have the doctor come give you a blood test, and then you can be discharged." I looked coldly at the woman before me, making my stance clear. Don't even think about drawing another drop of my blood. If you really must draw blood, you can draw a dead man's blood from my corpse. My ruthlessly cold words caused Ruka-yan's expression to change drastically. She knew I had always instinctively resisted blood draws. Every half year, she would coax me into getting a blood draw for a checkup, and every time I finished drawing blood, she would set aside her work to accompany me for a few days. But after losing my memory in this car accident, I seemed to have changed into an entirely different person. Ruka-yan couldn't comprehend it. Wasn't amnesia just losing memories? Why would one's entire temperament undergo such a drastic shift? Ruka-yuelan swallowed hard and stepped forward to smooth things over. "I think brother-in-law's complexion looks pretty good. There shouldn't be any problems. Just let brother-in-law go home and rest. Staying in the hospital is truly boring." She needed to hurry up and call Mom and Dad over to mediate. Brother-in-law listened to Mom and Dad the most. For now, it was best to go along with my wishes. She couldn't let big sister and brother-in-law start a shouting match right here in the hospital. In the end, Ruka-yan compromised. "I'll go handle the discharge paperwork right now." Seeing Ruka-yan compromise, Tatsuya subconsciously looked at me. He isn't going to be moved by her again, is he? 3 years of a sexless marriage have already proven that Ruka-yan is just a scumbag who disguises her gentleness. All her gentleness is fake. Not a single trace of fluctuation stirred my expression until Ruka-yan turned and walked out of the hospital room. Tatsuya instantly let out a breath of relief internally. That's more like it. Finally growing a backbone. While Ruka-yan went to process the discharge papers, 3 uninvited guests arrived at the hospital room. My oldest sister Chu Yue-chan, along with father and mother Xia. What wind blew these rare guests in? Hearing those words, the expressions of the Chu family members shifted. Chu Yue-chan's face turned especially dark. "Tatsuya, why are you here?" Tatsuya crossed his arms. If scum can be here, why can't I? Aside from Kozue, not a single person in the Chu family is any good. Taking advantage of my amnesia, Tatsuya Ye immediately started dropping eye drops. Kozue, these are your family members from your maiden side. For the past 3 years, they've constantly sucked your blood, and every few days they'd call you back to act as their free servant. So hurry up and forget about them. I asked very seriously, is the Chu family very poor? Tatsuya Ye's eyelid twitched slightly. Is the Chu family poor? He recalled back when we were in high school. At that time, he genuinely thought my family was poor, so he would often take advantage of holidays and breaks to bring me along to work part-time at his uncle's Western restaurant to earn a bit of pocket money. As a result, that was the first time he saw my family. They were dressed in high-luxury attire, bringing the little Prince Chusei to the restaurant for a meal, whereupon Chusei began tossing out passive-aggressive remarks that caused the whole family to start scolding Chu Yuan for coming out to embarrass himself. It had made him so angry back then that he dumped an entire bowl of black pepper sauce straight onto Chusei's head. Afterward, he heard that Chusei got so angry he fell sick and was hospitalized. Mother Chu, Hina spoke up with displeasure. Why are you hanging around with this unmannered man again? Didn't I tell you? You're Mr. Yan now. Your status is different. You shouldn't associate with this kind of low-class trash. Don't you remember? My indifferent gaze lingered on Hinawawa's face for a few seconds before I spoke without a shred of emotion. Hinawawa was momentarily stunned and then flew into a rage. What kind of attitude is that? I am your mother. Is that how you talk to me? Tatsuya Ye, standing off to the side, immediately laughed out loud. You still remember you're his mother. Did you ever treat him like family? When he married Ruka Yan, didn't you open your lion's maw and sell Kozue off straight into an Uxor local marriage for a bride price of 200 million? Chu Yue-chan looked as though she wanted to slap this man unconscious with 2 blows. My brother-in-law has money to burn. Besides, the Chu family's affairs aren't your place to meddle in as an outsider. Tatsuya Ye was just about to retort back when I gently pulled on his wrist. My entanglement with Chusei for all these years has reached the point where it's time to untie it. The debt of being raised by the Chu family has already been paid off in full by my wife with money. From now on, we each take our own bridge and our own road. Let there be no further contact whatsoever. Hearing that I was cutting ties with Chusei and breaking off relations with my biological mother, she gasped. I carried you in my womb for 10 months. I even had my uterus removed for you and Chusei so that I could never give birth again. Tatsuya Ye, standing nearby, couldn't help laughing out loud at that point. Unable to hold it in, he poked his nose in to ask a question. Was getting pregnant an addiction? You still wanted more? Eldest sister Chu Yue-chan finally lost her patience, stepping forward a few paces right up to Tatsuya Ye. Shut your mouth! Do you believe I can find people to get rid of you permanently? My gaze darkened, and without a second thought, I pulled Tatsuya Ye behind me, warning her in an icy tone, if you dare touch a single hair on his head, I'll make sure you regret it bitterly. In the eyes of the law, I am also Ruka-yan's husband. Even though Ruka-yan was also scummy, Ruka-yan at least provided me with material satisfaction and the protection of status and face, unlike the Chu family, who wanted my blood while bullying me. Eldest sister Chu Yue-chan looked at my desperate, protective stance, a flicker of doubt crossing her mind. Could this guy Chu Yuan actually have amnesia? Father Chu, standing nearby, pulled Chu Yue-chan aside and said with a smile, Since Chu Yuan is still hospitalized, we won't disturb him. Rest well, and we'll come back to see you another day. Knowing that a lean camel is still bigger than a horse, and realizing they couldn't squeeze out any benefits, the Chu family members all deflated and left. After the Chu family cleared out, I turned to Tatsuya Ye and said, Let's go. I flipped back the blanket and prepared to get out of bed to put on my shoes. Ruka-yan, who had just hurried back, saw me at the bedside and crouched down ahead of me, grabbing my ankle to help me put on my shoes. I pulled my foot back, stood barefoot on the floor, bent down to pick up my sandals from the woman's hands and said, I'll do it myself. I put on my shoes very quickly. Before Ruka-yan could recover from her half-crouched position on the floor, I had already finished putting them on and walked away from her. Ruka-yan raised her eyes, whispering in a dazed, lost murmur, Kozue. Watching my retreating back, Ruka Yuelan exclaimed in dismay, "You go accompany brother-in-law home first? I'm going to make a call to mom and dad." Ruka Yuelan already realized the severity of the situation and was desperate to seek help from her parents. Her big sister's brooding, introverted personality meant she only ever had a few gentle words to spare in front of brother-in-law, and that was only when brother-in-law was willing to listen. With brother-in-law acting so cold and resistant toward big sister right now, big sister probably wouldn't be able to get a single word out. Their parents had to step in. Acknowledging the words, Ruka Yan finally got up from the floor, uttered a low reply, and walked out of the hospital room. Seated inside the Yan family's Rolls-Royce all the way back, my mind was entirely occupied with how to bring up divorce with Ruka Yan once we returned. When we dropped Tatsuya Ye off at his home, he got out of the car and flashed me a hand gesture. "Stay in touch." I smiled back at him and nodded. I rolled up the car window and withdrew my gaze. The moment I saw Ruka Yan looking at me, the smile on my face instantly vanished. Today, the driver didn't even dare to breathe heavily. The atmosphere between President Yan and Sir was far too strange. Normally, Sir would chat softly with President Yan, and finding topics to talk about was always Sir's job. But today, Sir specialized in keeping completely silent, leaving President Yan looking less than thrilled either. This working stiff felt his scalp prickling with anxiety. It took a mighty effort to deliver the two big Buddha statues safely to the villa before the driver leaned against a tree outside and took several deep breaths. Meanwhile, stepping into the villa, I stood in the entryway and stared blankly at the interior decor of the living room. It was luxurious, yet permeated everywhere with a warmth that felt as though it had been crafted by a woman's hands. Ruka Yan gently wrapped her arms around my waist, whispering softly, "This is our matrimonial home. I decorated it with my own hands." A tickle at my waist made goosebumps rise across my arms. She squatted down on the floor, and taking advantage of the opportunity to change shoes, I slipped away from the woman's grasp. Ruka Yan paused for a fraction of a second, pulling back her empty hands. It seems her kozue is ticklish. After standing back up, I headed straight upstairs. I needed a showdown with Ruka Yan. Of course, this marriage wouldn't be all that easy to dissolve. Ruka Yan was a figure of standing and reputation in the capital who cared deeply about her face and public image. If so, she would have to agree to several conditions of mine. Ruka Yan gazed at my ascending figure for a long while. The two of them sat facing each other on the study sofa. Ruka Yan's thin lips parted slightly. "Would you like some juice?" "Freshly squeezed." I coldly declined, then cut straight to the point. "Let's get a divorce. Things going on between you and Chusei like this long-term isn't a solution." Hearing me bring up divorce, Ruka Yan's hands resting on her thighs instantly clenched tight. Looking at my calm expression, she was momentarily at a loss for words. No sooner had I started than Ruka Yan rushed right over and grabbed me in a tight embrace. "There's nothing between Chusei and me." He's had depression in the past and was always thinking about suicide, which is why I accommodated him. I felt my ribs aching from being squeezed by her embrace. "Let go of me first." Naturally, Ruka Yan refused to let go, keeping me locked within her arms. I asked with eerie calmness, "Are you not planning to consider the viability of a divorce at all?" Ruka Yan tightened her arms around me even further. "Unless I die, divorce is impossible." That Ruka Yan would refuse a divorce was well within my expectations. Wealthy couples wouldn't divorce even if they each played around on the side. Their public face mattered more to them than their lives. If you can agree to 3 conditions and sign an agreement with me, I can consider temporarily holding off on a divorce. Ruka Yan buried her face in the crook of my neck, giving a low nod of assent. First, no one is ever allowed to draw my blood again. Although rare blood types are precious, given the financial resources of the Chu and Yan families, spending money to find other volunteer donors for Chusei isn't difficult at all. Ruka Yan fell silent for a long time before ultimately agreeing to it. Hearing her agree, I continued with the second condition. Second, I will sever all ties with the Chu family. If you help the Chu family in the future, please do so under Chusei's name, and don't tie me into it whatsoever. This time, Ruka-yan agreed very quickly. Fine. Third, I am going out to work. You cannot use your status to restrict me from doing anything. I must have absolute freedom. Ruka-yan froze. I was going out to work. Her Adam's apple bobbed slightly as she lowered her gaze to look into my eyes. You don't need to work. I'll support you. I calmly cut her off. The biggest lie in this world is, I'll support you. After all, those who take handouts become soft-handed. The Chu family demands things without giving anything back, whereas Ruka-yan's rank is a bit more sophisticated. She knows how to crush me with money. But Ruka-yan didn't understand. The past me hadn't been completely obedient to her just because she showered me with money. Fortunately, a car accident had wiped all of that away. Since that was the case, after a long silence, Ruka-yan finally relented. But for your own safety, whenever you go out, I will send a bodyguard to protect you in secret. I gave a cold, dry laugh. Is it protection, or are you afraid I'll run away? Or are you afraid Chusei won't have any rare blood available to use? She didn't think my 3 conditions were just empty talk, did she? If she dared draw my blood for Chusei again, she shouldn't blame me for going completely unhinged. Looking at me, someone whose trust in her had dropped to 0 after losing my memory, Ruka-yan explained with bitter anguish, "It's to protect you." I lifted my chin slightly to look at the woman before me. Since you've agreed to all 3 conditions, let's sign an agreement. If possible, I'd like to get it notarized. Not giving her a chance to answer, I dropped a final line, have the agreement ready and bring it to me to sign, and turned to walk out of the study. Early the next morning, I spoke with my brother Tatsuya Ye about going to work at his uncle's real estate company. When Ruka-yan came downstairs after putting away clothes, she found that I had already left. Staring at the untouched breakfast on the dining table with a cold expression, she summoned a maid. The maid turned slightly pale and stammered, "Madam, I tried to advise Sir, but after Sir gave me a look, I didn't dare say anything more. In the past, Sir was always so gentle." Ruka-yan furrowed her brow slightly. Every single servant in the villa had been personally chosen by her, and she had always maintained a good relationship with them. Why had my changes been so drastic after losing my memory? Kozue seemed to be resisting everything about her, eager to draw a clear line. Just as Ruka-yan's expression grew increasingly grim, her phone rang. It was a call from the elder Mrs. Yan. Ruka-yan answered, her tone softening slightly. Elder Mrs. Yan's voice carried a sob. "Yu-yan, why did you make Chu-yuan sad again? Why can't you just stay away from that Chusei? He's no good. Why won't you listen?" Ruka-yan spoke in a deep, earnest tone. "Chu-yuan's amnesia is only temporary. He'll remember me." Elder Mrs. Yan let out a heavy sigh. "Chu-yuan liked you so much, but if you keep breaking his heart like this, his heart will turn cold sooner or later. If your father went around making hot searches with another woman every few days like this, I would have divorced your father ages ago." Hearing those words, the palm holding Ruka-yan's phone tightened abruptly. "Whatever. I can't be bothered talking to you. Your father and I just stepped out of the airport. We're coming over to see Chu-yuan." Elder Mrs. Yan had been called back by a phone call from Ruka Yuelan. Originally, the 2 elders had been traveling abroad, hiking and mountain climbing. Elder Mrs. Yan's voice suddenly spiked in volume. "What? It's only 8 a.m. and he's not at home? Did you 2 fight and he ran away from home?" "He went to work." Ruka-yan's explanation only made Elder Mrs. Yan even more furious. "I think you've truly lost your mind." "I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm calling Chu-yuan myself." Following a long stretch of silence, before long, Elder Mrs. Yan called back. "Why can't I get through to Chu-yuan's phone?" Ruka-yan's heart tightened. She immediately hung up on Elder Mrs. Yan and dialed my number herself. It wouldn't go through. Ruka-yan furrowed her brow slightly, then sent me a message. A red exclamation mark appeared. Only then did Ruka-yan realize she had been blocked. "Let's go, I've already told my uncle, and he's so happy his mouth won't close." When Tatsuya Yi said this, he rolled his eyes. Mr. Yan's treatment is just different. When I joined the company back then, Uncle wasn't nearly this happy. I let my gaze linger on Tatsuya's face for a moment before slowly looking away, thinking to myself that this truly was a good brother of mine, extraordinarily protective of his own. Once I stepped into the elevator, the black-suited bodyguard sent by Ruka-yan squeezed in as well, waiting outside the door only after Tatsuya-ye and I entered the office. The phone he used for a direct, one-way line to Ruka-yan vibrated. He immediately pulled it out. "President Yan! Sir's mood is very good." Ruka-yan, whose mood was thoroughly ruined after being blocked, saw this reply. "Chu Yuan's mood is very good because he blocked me? I even blocked her entire family. The amnesiac Kozue is truly rebellious." The fact that the entire Yan family had been blocked couldn't be hidden. Elder Mrs. Yan switched to a different phone and instantly got through, only to find that nobody was picking up. Elder Mrs. Yan instantly lost her composure. "We need to go talk to Chu Yuan." Who knows what kind of messy ideas someone poured into Chu Yuan's head after his amnesia to make him drift away from us. Could it be that Chusei? It made her so angry she wanted to assassinate that Chusei on the spot. Over in a certain vacation town abroad, Chusei said in shock, "Big sister, what did you say?" "It's absolute truth," Chu Yue-chan said. "After Chu Yuan got amnesia, he blocked all of our contact info. When she first discovered her number was blocked, she had been utterly dumbfounded at the time." Chusei, vacationing abroad, felt somewhat unsettled. 3 years! Fortunately, Chu Yue-shin possessed a reserved, soft-spoken personality, and Chu Yuen had been kept in the dark, so the Chu family's narrative from 3 years ago had never fallen apart. But now that Chu Yuen had actually gotten amnesia and wanted to cut ties with the Chu family, how was he supposed to keep playing this game? "Chu Yuan, he isn't faking it, is he?" Chusei instantly panicked. "Did he mention anything about asking me for blood?" "Not really." Chu Yue-chan's reply caused Chusei to let out an immediate sigh of relief. As long as the secret hadn't blown up, that was fine. If it had, he would have had no choice but to think of another way. Thinking of my temperament, Chusei hooked the corners of his lips. "Big sister, I'm booking a flight back to the country right now. I need to meet with Chu Yuan face to face and see if he really lost his memory." After I locked my bedroom door tightly and prepared to sleep, an unfamiliar number called in. I hadn't originally planned to answer, but the number kept ringing persistently. With a cold and collected gaze, I vaguely guessed what was going on. Then, a sarcastic remark curved my lips as my finger gently swiped to answer. The moment the call connected, a voice drilled straight into my ears. "I'm coming back to the country right away." I blinked, guessing it was one of the Chu family members I had blocked, though I hadn't guessed it would be Chusei. I kept it brief and concise. "Wonderful. Hurry back. I'm dying to kill you." The words perched on the tip of Chusei's tongue choked right back down into his throat. This wasn't the me he was familiar with. From childhood to adulthood, I had always been gentle, and because he despised that gentleness of mine to the core, he had targeted me with such hysteria. I didn't intend to waste too much breath on Chusei. "Chusei, whatever you took from me, I will make you return 100-fold, 1,000-fold." Dropping this declaration, I hung up the phone and casually blocked the number. 3 days later, at the Chu family villa, Chusei, who had been personally picked up and driven back by the 3 Chu Yue-chan sisters, fluttered into the living room like a little bird to embrace his dear parents. Chusei finally sat down amidst the doting care of the Chu family, who surrounded him like stars around the moon. The 3 Chu sisters took their seats separately, scrambling and elbowing each other to sit right next to him. After taking a couple of sips of juice, he finally raised his eyes to look toward his parents. "Older brother, he lost his memory." Mother Chu scoffed with utter disdain. "This isn't a TV drama. I've asked a doctor. It's just a mild concussion. How could it possibly reach the point of amnesia? Most likely he's faking amnesia just to attract Yuyan's attention." Eldest sister Chu Yue-chan readily agreed with her mother's judgment. Chu Yuan must be imitating Xiaosheng, so he started copying him too. He's not just claiming to feel unwell. Otherwise, why would Ruka-yan abandon me just to go see him? Bringing up Ruka-yan, the second Chu sister, Chu Qingqing, wore a deeply resentful and aggrieved expression. That Ruka-yan too! Refusing to want a fine young man like our Xiaosheng, and instead choosing that permanent death mask Chu Yuan. If Chu Yuan hadn't snatched Xiaosheng's beloved away back then, how would Xiaosheng have developed depression? How could he have constantly thought about suicide? Ever since that grand, world-captivating wedding between me and Ruka Yan. The image of Xiao Sheng lying in the bathtub with slit wrists bleeding out had remained a lingering shadow for their entire family. Over the past 3 years, they didn't know how many times they had lived in terror and anxiety. The third Chu sister, Chu Liuyan, also spoke with a lightly angered expression. Ruka Yan really is blind. She forgot who it was that made Chu Yan climb up to the rooftop to save her back then. At the time, Xiao Sheng's body was so weak, yet he was still worrying about her. Even though he wasn't feeling well himself, he went to her hospital room every single day to keep her company, chat with her, and teach her how to draw. Her conscience has simply been eaten by dogs. Second sister, please don't say any more. Chusei's eyes instantly turned red around the rims, looking as though he had suffered some earth-shattering grievance. The moment Mother Chu saw her precious son's eyes turning red, she hurriedly scolded, all right, stop rubbing salt into Xiao Sheng's wounds. It's Chu Yuan who doesn't know any better. Clearly, Chu Yuan is the one who owes Xiao Sheng, yet he still stole Xiao Sheng's beloved, driving Xiao Sheng to utter heartbreak. Chu Yuichan suddenly spoke up. Did you all check today's hot searches? Chu Sei asked with some confusion. Big sister? Chu Yuichan quickly explained the ins and outs of the trending topics. Father Chu and Mother Chu's expressions instantly turned as gloomy as water. The Chu family was a listed company now, yet Chu Yuan had gone to Wang's real estate to work such a lowly job as a sales associate? Had water gotten into his brain, or was he intentionally stirring up trouble? Hearing this, Chu Sei gradually fell into deep thought. Mom, could eldest brother be running out of money? The Chu family's chorus of condemnation abruptly ceased. Running out of money? Would Ruka Yan's husband ever run out of money? Wasn't that an absolute fairy tale? Of course, Chu Sei knew that over the past 3 years, Chu Yuan had subsidized the Chu family with a tremendous amount of money. He said pointedly, Ruka Yan would never mistreat her husband. She should be giving eldest brother a fixed allowance every month. But eldest brother suddenly coming out to work must mean he has no money left. This caused Mother Chu and the 3 Chu sisters' expressions to shift slightly in unison. They all understood what Xiao Sheng meant. The living allowance Ruka Yan gave to Chu Yuan had all been funneled to subsidize them, so now that he was broke, he had no choice but to come out and work. After a long silence, Mother Chu finally squeezed out a scolding. If he's out of money, why didn't he tell us? Every time she loses money playing mahjong, she makes Chu Yuan send cash over. She assumed Chu Yuan was super wealthy. Who knew Ruka Yan didn't give Chu Yuan an unlimited credit line to spend? Hearing Mother Chu's words, a flash crossed Chu Sei's eyes before he sweetly wrapped his arms around Mother Chu's arm, acting spoiled. Even though fourth brother and I like the same woman, we're biological twin brothers after all. Now that fourth brother's out of money and even has to go sell houses, we should go show him a little concern, right? Mother Chu let out a cold hum, but ultimately didn't say anything further. Chu Sei smiled and proposed, if fourth brother is really short on cash, we can just lend him a little bit first. We can't let fourth brother actually go out and sell houses. Not only would that make Ruka Yan lose face, but it would also make people think we treat fourth brother poorly. Xiao Sheng is right, Father Chu stood up. Let's all go together to Wang's real estate and bring Chu Yuan back. Seeing the Chu family all agreed to go persuade Chu Yuan to return, the corners of Chu Sei's lips curved into a faint, subtle arc. The Chu family aggressively stormed into the sales department, and Father Chu spotted me at a single glance, instantly letting out a loud bark. The bustling sales department quieted down in an instant. Everyone turned their heads in astonishment to stare at this hostile-looking middle-aged man. Under everyone's watchful eyes, feeling thoroughly embarrassed, Father Chu roared at me, "You're actually out here selling houses? You're an absolute disgrace. You're coming right back with us right now." I put down the data sheet in my hand, raised my gaze, and looked indifferently at the Father Chu before me, Chu Junsheng. Mr. Chu, if you're here to cause trouble, please leave immediately. Chu Junsheng stared at me in sheer disbelief. I gave a faint smile, my gaze carrying a mocking irony. Mr. Chu wouldn't happen to think that what I said in the hospital room the other day was just spoken casually, would he? The entire Chu family froze. Qin Fenghua's eyes even turned red with rage. "I am your biological mother." Never mind you unilaterally cutting ties. Even if you ran to court, a judge wouldn't rule that we're severing ties. I let out a nonchalant, indifferent chuckle. A biological father and mother who sold me to the Yan family for 200 million. From the very second the Chu family stepped through this door, I had never planned on swallowing my grievances in silence. Netizens loved a good spectacle more than anything. By now, people had already started taking videos. Wait, Mr. Chu was actually sold to the Yan family for 200 million by his own biological parents? How could parents like that exist? Suddenly, I feel so sorry for Mr. Chu. Hearing the murmurs of the surrounding crowd, Chu Junsheng's eyes instantly so away, with a frantic, bloodshot crimson. He raised his palm and fiercely swung a slap across my cheek. "You unfilial son!" Amidst a chorus of gasps, Du Song, a bodyguard with a sharp and stern gaze, raised his right hand and ruthlessly clamped down onto Chu Junsheng's wrist. In that single instant, Chu Junsheng felt as though his wrist was about to be crushed, letting out a miserable shriek on the spot. Du Song coldly flung Chu Junsheng aside. Not broken yet. If this guy hadn't been Sir's biological father, he would have been ready to perform a live, bone-breaking demonstration right on the spot. Someone near the entrance shouted out, "The Yan Group's chairwoman is here." What? Elder Mrs. Yan is here? Then there's an even better show to watch. I wonder which side Mr. Chu's wealthy mother-in-law is going to take. Elder Mrs. Yan had brought her group of senior lady friends to come support me, but the moment she walked in, she saw the entire Chu family present, along with that Chu Sei, who kept making hot searches with her eldest daughter every few days. Her expression instantly turned unpleasant. What is the meaning of this? Bodyguard Du Song stepped straight forward to unceremoniously file a complaint. "Old madam, this man's entire family walked in here calling Sir a disgrace, tried to forcibly drag Sir away, and when Sir wouldn't go, he tried to slap Sir across the face." What? Hearing this, Elder Mrs. Yan grew anxious, hurrying over to grab my hand and anxiously checking my face and hands. "Where did he hit you? Does it hurt? Do you need to go to the hospital?" I explained softly, "I'm fine." Thankfully, Du Song stopped Mr. Chu in time. Elder Mrs. Yan instantly let out a sigh of relief. After confirming I hadn't suffered any harm, Elder Mrs. Yan turned her cold gaze toward the troublemaking Chu family. "I say, Mr. Chu Junsheng, aren't your hands reaching just a little too far?" Chu Junsheng's face flushed a deep red, though he ultimately didn't dare act presumptuous in front of Elder Mrs. Yan. "Chu Yuan, he's my son." Elder Mrs. Yan let out an unsparing, merciless, cold laugh. "Now you remember Chu Yuan is your son? Back when our Yuyan and Chu Yuan entered an arranged marriage and we invited you to discuss wedding details, what did you say? You said, just go get a marriage certificate. Is that how you treat your own biological son?" Everyone present drew in a sharp breath of air, instantly buzzing with chatter. It was truly rare for a groom's family to tell the bride's side that they wouldn't be holding a wedding ceremony at all. Chu Junsheng was pinned down into speechlessness by Elder Mrs. Yan's commanding aura, his entire face swelling to the color of a pig's liver. We did that because—" I gave a light chuckle. Mr. Chu didn't want the Yan family to handle my wedding because he was afraid his youngest son would be heartbroken, right? The rest of the crowd instantly experienced a sudden flash of enlightenment. Almost forgot that both of the Chu family's sons had gotten mixed up with President Ruka Yan. Listening to the surrounding whispers, Chu Junsheng felt as though the dignity of a listed company's chairman was being trampled flat into the dirt. At this moment, Elder Mrs. Yan finally remembered the slap Du Song had intercepted. She still didn't know what it had been about, but she trusted it definitely wasn't my fault, as I never provoked elders into anger. Therefore, Elder Mrs. Yan asked in a cold voice, "I'd like to hear Mr. Chu explain what my Chu Yuan did wrong to make Mr. Chu try to slap him across the face in front of so many people during his working hours." Chu Junsheng's mind was an absolute blank. Why did he try to hit me again? He seemed to be— Qin Fanghua hurriedly chimed in from the side. "It's because Chu Yuan said he wanted to sever ties with us, which made his father furious." I gave a faint smile. "There are security cameras right here, you know." I wouldn't be stupid enough to sever ties with my biological parents in front of so many people. The law doesn't even support that. A plant planted by the Yan family nearby spoke up. I was right next to Mr. Chu at the time, and I heard it very clearly. It was Mr. Chu who said he was sold to the Yan family for 200 million by his own biological parents, which caused that man to fly into a rage of embarrassment and resort to violence. Another plant quickly corroborated. I was there too. Mr. Chu never said anything about severing ties. Qin Fanghua glared fiercely at them. Did you not hear what he called us? What son calls his own biological parents, madam and sir? I looked at Qin Fanghua with a completely calm expression. Madam Chu, care to guess why I lost my memory? Qin Fenghua's face instantly lost its composure, and she fell silent without a word. I took a step forward, looking up and down at the slender, sickly-looking Chusei. I saw on the hot searches that on the 3-year wedding anniversary of Ruka Yan and me, Ruka Yan flew overnight to a foreign country just to accompany you. Do you love your sister-in-law that much? Chusei's eyes flushed red. I blinked, pulling my phone straight out of my pocket. Since there are so many people here today, let's settle things once and for all. Chusei had only wanted to come see if I really had lost my memory. But he hadn't expected me to be this hardcore now. He instantly lunged forward, trying to stop me from making the call. Don't! Dusong stepped forward in a swift stride, blocking the space between me and Chusei. Don't touch our sir. Dusong detested homewreckers the most, because her first love had been stolen away by a male homewrecker invading her territory. Watching me press the speakerphone button as Ruka Yan's deep, gentle voice drifted through, regret gnawed endlessly at Chusei's heart. He shouldn't have come today. I glanced at Chusei and said indifferently, Ruka Yan, Chusei brought the Chu family to storm my workplace. I think we should head to the Civil Affairs Bureau to process our divorce papers as soon as possible to make room for your beloved confidant. Today, right in front of everyone, I am publicly proposing a divorce to Ruka Yan. What choice will she make? The moment Elder Mrs. Yan heard me bring up divorce, she panicked. No! I only recognize you, Chu Yuan, as my son-in-law, and I will never let scum like Chusei step foot through the Yan family doors. Scarcely had Elder Mrs. Yan's voice faded when Ruka Yan's calm voice came through my speakerphone. Kozui? She insisted stubbornly that I was just speaking out of anger. Ruka Yan figured the scene must have gotten chaotic beyond belief for me to call her and demand a public stance. Therefore, Ruka Yan's attitude remained unwavering. She would die before divorcing. Ruka Yan's resolute refusal allowed Elder Mrs. Yan to let out a breath of relief. She really had been afraid that this daughter of hers would suffer a moment of foolishness and agree to divorce me, because then her old man would definitely bring out family discipline again. Pain on the daughter's body meant pain in the mother's heart. I sneered as I looked at Chusei's pale face, saying mockingly, What a pity. Looks like you'll just have to settle for being a shameful, hidden homewrecker. Chusei let out a choked sob, covered his face, and turned to bolt outside. The affairs between him and Ruka Yan truly couldn't bear the light of day. Once exposed to the open, his only option was the 36 stratagems. Running away was the best course. Seeing Chusei run out, the Chu family members chased after him in unison, completely forgetting about me in their panic. Chu Yuachan ran to the doorway, suddenly stopped, turned around to glare at me with utter disgust, and accused, Chu Yuan, all of Xiaosheng's heartbreak is your fault. Having said that, she didn't wait for me to react before rushing off to chase after Chusei. Everyone stared at one another in blank dismay. What did the eldest Chu mismean by that? Exactly what did Mr. Chu owe her younger brother? I'm so curious. I stared at the doorway, my mind also pondering Chu Yuechan's words. Did I owe Chusei something? There must be more to our relationship than just being love rivals. Did something else happen in the past? Just as silence fell over the scene, Ruka Yan's gentle voice rang out once again. Don't let your imagination run wild. Those hot searches are all baseless shadows. I'm absolutely loyal to you. My heartbeat inexplicably accelerated a little, but remembering our nominal, sexless marriage of the past 3 years and recalling the despair bleeding from my burner account diary, I instantly regained my reason and directly hung up her phone. Apologies, everyone. My personal family matters have disturbed everyone's enthusiasm for house hunting today. To show my apology, I will prepare a batch of cakes and ice cream. Please bear with us for a moment. My warm and polite attitude won the unanimous favorable impression of the buyers, and the staff instantly bustled into action. Afterward, my name ended up back on the hot searches, this time dragging Ruka-yan and Chusei down with it. The fan netizens who had long despised Chusei's homewrecker logic finally felt vindicated enough to ruthlessly mock them to their hearts' content. The homewrecker's face got beaten until it swelled up. LMAO stormed in with high momentum just to cry like a baby on the way back. Originally, Mr. Chu kept sparing him for the sake of brotherhood and couldn't be bothered with his jumping around, but he actually had the nerve to go make trouble for Mr. Chu in public. Serves you right. Of course I didn't care about the online commentary. I was simply calculating how much commission I'd pull in from Jin Wai-wan. Chusei, however, wasn't as calm as I was. Seeing those cursing comments, especially the gloating ones, his face turned livid with rage. But what made him the angriest was that I seemed to have genuinely broken free from the trap he had designed. After all, I had even forgotten Ruka-yan, so how was he supposed to manipulate Chu-yuan anymore? A trace of unwillingness flickered through Chusei's reddened eyes. It seems the only way is to use that move I feared the most to conduct a final probe. He pulled out that private phone that no one else knew about and dialed the single number saved on it. I had just been picked up from Jin Wai-wan by Ruka-yan and was sitting in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. Seeing that number, ignoring the fact that Ruka-yan was right beside me, I answered it directly. Chusei never expected Ruka-yan to have gone to Jin Wai-yuan to pick me up, so he blurted out this probing remark. "Older brother, if I send that video we filmed 3 years ago to Ruka-yan, do you think sister-in-law will change her mind and divorce you?" I instantly flared up in anger. Could it be that my past self was constantly manipulated by the Chu family, all because of this video of unknown contents? If a single video could manipulate a man, what kind of video it was went without saying. I answered word for word. "Feel free to send it to Ruka-yan, but if you dare leak it outward, I'll make sure you wish you were dead." How Ruka-yan viewed me or whether she would divorce me didn't matter to me. But if that kind of video leaked, I, Chu-yuan, would drag Chusei down to hell with me, even if it killed me. Chusei was left somewhat speechless. He muttered that the video from 3 years ago was actually, "My dear brother seems to have misunderstood." The smile at the corners of his lips surfaced for a single second before vanishing rapidly. If Chu-yuan doesn't even know what the video from 3 years ago is and is still telling me to go ahead and send it to Ruka-yan, wouldn't that mean I can't control him anymore? Reining in his temper, he promised softly, "Older brother, I won't send it to anyone else." The moment his final syllable dropped, I terminated the call. Scarcely had Chusei hung up when his other phone rang. Glancing at it, to his shock, it was a call from Ruka-yan. Instead of the joy he might have imagined, he wore a face full of tension. Taking a deep breath, Chusei hardened his scalp and answered, "Sister Yu-yan." Ruka-yan's voice was as cold as frozen ice. "Did you forget everything I told you? I was just checking on older brother. I didn't mean anything else." Ruka-yan cut off his words. "Don't put on an act for me. I can elevate you until you're surrounded by stars like the moon. Or I can step on you until everyone turns their backs on you and you're left completely isolated. You better remember what I told you." After the call hung up, he gripped his phone tightly, staring with bitter hatred at the photo on the wall of him acting as my best man. In the photo, the past me was smiling brightly, my eyes brimming with sweetness and happiness. As he stared, his eyes grew even redder than before, and in his fury, he tore the photo straight off the wall. In the back seat of the Rolls-Royce, after hanging up the phone, Ruka-yan extended a hand toward me and explained, "Kozue, what you said just now, if it's true, I can make him completely disappear." I asked with some confusion, glancing at the driver in the front row. But the driver acted as if he hadn't heard Ruka-yan's words at all, driving with single-minded, earnest focus. Ruka-yan earnestly explained beside me, Chu-yuan. Suspecting that Ruka-yan was testing me, I averted my gaze and sneered coldly, "Could you bear to part with Chusei?" Ruka-yan let out a low sigh. "It's Kozue who can't bear to part with him." Staring straight at this woman, would I be unable to bear parting with Chusei? Her Adam's apple bobbed slightly. Following that, unable to hold back, Ruka-yan yanked me toward her, clamped tightly onto my waist, and without a word of explanation, kissed me straight on the lips. I had only wanted to see if I could discover a trace of deception in her eyes, but instead, she seized the opportunity to catch me off guard. Even though the woman's kiss unexpectedly made me somewhat intoxicated, my heart twitched and throbbed with sharp pain. It hurt so much. Only when Ruka-yan saw the painful tears streaming from my eyes did she finally stop kissing me, changing tactics to gently hold me in her arms and coax me. I won't kiss anymore. But one thing seemed certain. The past me had indeed loved Ruka-yan, otherwise I wouldn't have had such a violent emotional reaction. A heartbreaking hoarseness laced Ruka-yan's voice, making her seem extremely aggrieved and tormented. "Kozue, remember already?" My heartbeat seemed to go thump. "Remember what?" Mentioning the past, a shallow gentleness flashed across her eyes. "Remember all those little bits and pieces of us falling in love?" I didn't believe it. My instinctive primary reaction was that she was lying. Ruka-yan reminded me, "I've shown Kozue the evidence before." Mentioning evidence, I suddenly grew a bit curious. On our wedding night, hadn't Ruka-yan been called away by Chusei? Thus, I turned to Ruka-yan and said, "I want to see the security footage from 3 years ago. Find it. I want to watch it the moment we get home." Ruka-yan still appeared as accommodating as ever. Thinking about it carefully, I suddenly found it somewhat strange. It seemed that as long as I didn't bring up divorce, Ruka-yan would agree to whatever I asked. I began to feel bewildered. My parents-in-law treated me like their own biological son. My 2 sisters-in-law had great attitudes toward me, and Yukocho and Suyukin, as Ruka-yan's trusted aides, were also full of respectful deference toward me as their brother-in-law. But Ruka-yan's hot searches with Chusei, combined with the nominal dead-letter status of my marriage with Ruka-yan, plus the records in that burner diary, all of it pointed to the fact that Ruka-yan held no love for me and only plotted against my rare blood type. Screw it, I'm going to see what kind of stuffing is inside Ruka-yan anyway. After returning to the villa and having dinner, Ruka-yan genuinely went to organize the security footage records from 3 years ago, while I accompanied Elder Mrs. Yan for a post-meal stroll to aid digestion. Elder Mrs. Yan held my soft, plump little hand, extremely satisfied with my condition over the past 3 years. She still remembered that 3 years ago I had been as skinny as a bag of bones, just like Chusei. Fortunately, the servants had been attentive and Yuyan had cared, plus she kept constant watch herself, finally managing to nurse her son-in-law into a robust, handsome hunk. Extremely handsome. I smiled faintly. Tatsuya Ye had sent me some messages. Seeing that I didn't react to the trending searches at all, Elder Mrs. Yan smiled with total comfort. "If you ask me, Kozue should have acted like this long ago, otherwise they'd still think my Yan family is easy to bully. There were several times I wanted to step in and slap their faces myself, if not for Kozue stopping me." Elder Mrs. Yan's nagging made me briefly lose myself in thought. Really? In the past, I actually sided with Chusei? Could it be because of that video from 3 years ago? After walking with Elder Mrs. Yan for a while, she said she was going next door to find her friends for a game of mahjong and told me to head back to rest first. I walked back into the villa, headed toward the 2nd floor, steadied my nerves, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. Ruka-yan had just risen from her desk, on which sat an open laptop. Thinking I should probably be a bit polite, I added, "Thanks for your hard work, President Yan." By the time I walked up to her, she rubbed my head. "You need to call me wife from now on, not President Yan. Anyone else can call me President Yan, but Kozue can't." I finally confirmed that Ruka-yan truly had some mental condition. Juvenile autism, adolescent neurosis. Who knew what kind of syndrome she'd develop in her old age? I subsequently sat down in the leather chair in front of the desk, my finger clicking the mouse to open the first video. The background of the video was the day of our wedding. I was wearing a black suit with red-rimmed eyes, being held by the woman standing right in front of me. The woman continuously murmured in a low voice, "I really only sent him to the hospital to stay with him for a little bit. The person I love is you. Please believe me, okay?" The woman gently pressed her lips to the man's lips. The man closed his eyes in at a loss for what to do, enduring it with both hands weakly clinging to the woman's shoulders. Watching the video, I wore a face full of question marks. That's all it took to coax him back? As I clicked open the second and third videos, I gradually grew numb. Sure enough, behind every woman who kept making mistakes, there was always a husband who indulged her mistakes. At this moment, Ruka-yan chimed in from the side with a hint of happiness. We used to be so affectionate, you see. Thinking of those videos I had just watched, where I would get coaxed back by Ruka-yan every single time, it probably had something to do with this gentle personality of mine. If I hadn't lost my memory in a car accident and forgotten my feelings for her, I probably would have been coaxed back by her this time too. I didn't want to bicker with Ruka-yan over those past matters. Since I didn't remember this woman anyway, even if she cheated with 100 or 1,000 more men in the future, I wouldn't feel a single shred of distress. The most crucial thing right now was getting my hands on the video held by Chusei. Therefore, I looked at the woman sitting down beside me, Ruka-yan. Chusei has a video that's being used to blackmail me. Figure out a way to get it back or destroy it directly. Ruka-yan asked with some confusion, "What video?" I shook my head. Anyway, he said on the phone it was a video of me filmed 3 years ago. Judging by his tone, I'm terrified of you seeing this video. Ruka-yan pondered briefly. A video filmed 3 years ago? I've seen that video. It's nothing. I stared in shock. You've seen that video? Ruka-yan replied with a calm and untroubled expression. He couldn't possibly make Kozue angry over a video. Although she had felt a bit uncomfortable at the time, she quickly coaxed herself into feeling better because Kozue had personally promised to marry her. What could possibly be happier than that? I was utterly speechless. Even if I was Ruka-yan's nominal husband, it still concerned the dignity of a dignified female CEO, right? How could she keep a video like that around for the new year? Furthermore, a much more speechless possibility suddenly occurred to me. Did the past me know you saw this video in Chusei's hands? Ruka-yan hesitated slightly. He probably didn't know. He never brought it up with me. Anyway, it was all from before we got married. I shoved her away. Then, did you know Chusei kept using this video to threaten me? Making me work like an ox and a horse for the Chu family and hand over all the money you gave me for them to spend? Ruka-yan froze. Threaten? What is there to threaten you with in that video? Ruka-yan's bewildered expression made me suddenly realize something was amiss. Chusei was holding that kind of video and had already shown it to Ruka-yan ages ago. How could Ruka-yan's reaction possibly be this calm? I calmed down and asked, "What kind of video did Chusei show you?" Hearing me ask about the video's contents, Ruka-yan reluctantly pulled out her phone. I was at a loss for words. How did this person have a habit of saving videos? As expected of a CEO who didn't walk the beaten path, who knew how many gigabytes her phone storage had? Soon, Ruka-yan located the video Chusei had sent her. I took her phone and opened the video. In the footage, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and Chusei was sitting right beside me, pressed up close. He spoke first. "Older brother, how can you dislike Sister Yu-yan and like Senior Chin-ran? How could Senior Chin-ran ever compare to Sister Yu-yan?" I lowered my head, my fingers tightening slightly. Liking someone doesn't need a reason. I just like Senior Chin-ran. Hearing that, Chusei couldn't help sighing. If Sister Yu-yan finds out, how heartbroken will she be? Right at that moment, my phone rang in the video footage. It was a call from Senior Chin-ran. My fingers trembled slightly, but I quickly answered it. Senior Chin-ran. I don't know what was said on the other end, but my tears fell instantly. With that, the video ended. Having finished watching the video, my entire being relaxed. I thought it was one of those high-definition, uncensored adult videos. After all, having grown up in the Chu family and being twin brothers with Chusei, if Chusei had wanted to frame me, it would have been easy. Turns out it was just this. I had misunderstood. With an easygoing expression, I handed the phone back to Ruka-yan. Ruka-yan clearly didn't quite understand. Misunderstood? What misunderstanding? Chusei used a video of me filmed 3 years ago to threaten me, and even said I'd be terrified of you seeing it. I thought it was some kind of scandalous, unspeakable video, which is why I asked you to go get it back from him to prevent it from leaking. Ruka-yan still didn't get it. What unspeakable video? Are you sure you're a normal woman? You still don't get that? After burning with annoyance for a full second, I realized, why did I instantly understand dirty subtext that even Ruka-yan didn't get? Irritated, I stated it bluntly. The kind of video where you appear without any clothes on. Ruka-yan's Adam's apple bobbed slightly as well. You're identical twin brothers. He wouldn't dare. Those words caught me off guard. In the footage from 3 years ago, Chusei and I really did look cut from the exact same mold, unlike now, where we didn't look very similar anymore, because back then I had been extremely skinny. Skinny, just like Chusei. Nowadays, I was considerably more handsome than in the video footage, which immediately set me apart from Chusei. Looking at the woman before me, I said with somewhat complicated feelings, Ruka-yan, I'm starting to not understand you anymore. Ruka-yan raised her slender fingers to gently stroke my cheek, her voice dropping into a low, bewitching tone. Kozue doesn't need to understand me, you just need to believe me. Believe her? I wouldn't dare. We were nothing more than a nominal plastic couple with a 3-year marriage. However, I was already beginning to harbor a sliver of doubt toward the diary entries in my burner account. After all, a person ultimately trusted what they saw with their own eyes. I once again fell asleep dragged down by big koala Ruka-yan. But tonight wasn't a peaceful, dreamless sleep. Instead, I suffered a nightmare that caused my heart to ache with agonizing pain. I was locked inside a pitch-black, enclosed little room, lying on the floor like a dog. I was so hungry and thirsty I couldn't even cry out. I felt like I was dying. At that moment, Chusei's voice rang out from outside the door. Older brother, you'd better think this through carefully. Unless you agree, Mom and Dad won't let you out, you know? In my haze of feverish delirium, I wondered, agree to what? The voice outside continued to drift in. I heard older brother's beloved is still waiting to marry older brother. If he finds out older brother turned into a corpse, I wonder if she'll go crazy. The Chu family's eldest miss is starting to gossip behind people's backs again. If you have the guts, say that to my face. Ever since finding out the Chu family treated me poorly, Tatsuya Ye had gone hard head-to-head against the Chu family. Back then, the Chu family hadn't been as monstrously powerful as they were now, only considered to have modest assets, so Tatsuya Ye hadn't been targeted or retaliated against by them. Why are you here? Chu Yue-chan's voice cut off abruptly as she turned around and saw bodyguard Dusong pinching the neck of the Chu family butler, with me and Tatsuya Ye following right behind him. Dusong tossed the Chu family butler aside like a rag doll. A mere Chu family dares to make our Yan family sir wait at the front entrance? Gasping for huge gulps of air, the butler didn't even dare let out a peep. How could he dare resist? In the past, every time I entered the front door, I generally had to wait over an hour just to get into the Chu family estate. Who would have thought that now I had a bodyguard by my side who almost choked him to death on the spot? Before Chusei could figure out how to crack the situation, he took the initiative to speak first. Older brother, why didn't you give us a call beforehand when coming back? Has older brother eaten? Should I have the maid remake something for older brother? Tatsuya Ye unceremoniously ripped away Chusei's hypocritical facade. Stop putting on an act of brotherly deep affection here. When have you ever treated Chu Yuan well? I've seen shameless people, but someone as shameless as you is a first for me. Chusei's eyes instantly turned red with a start, shrinking his body slightly like a pitiful little creature bullied by a villain. Seeing her precious younger brother scolded to the point of tears, Chu Yue-chan instantly exploded into furious rage. Tatsuya, Yi, have you grown tired of living? You venomous-mouthed old virgin. No wonder Zhang Yingxuan didn't want you. You threw yourself at her for over a dozen years and she still didn't want you. Tatsuya Ye's expression shifted drastically. He simply stared dead on at Chu Yue-chan, unable to squeeze out a single word for a moment. He had indeed chased after Zhang Yingxuan for all those years, and Zhang Yingxuan had ultimately never accepted him. Seeing my brother instantly broken down, my gaze turned even more icy. At least the person Tatsuya Ye chased after was his own neighbor's older sister, unlike you, Chusei, who chased after your own sister-in-law. Chusei said with a wronged expression, I only feel admiration and reverence towards Sister Yuyan. There is nothing improper between us. I walked step by step closer to Chusei with a faint smile. Is this the kind of innocence where you made a phone call on our wedding night / wedding anniversary to summon Ruka away, and then spent a wonderful evening together? Seeing me pressing in step by step and terrified that I might reach out and hit someone, Chu Yue-chen shielded Chusei behind her. "Chu Yuan, that's enough! Ruka Yan was the one who liked Chusei in the first place. If Ruka Yan hadn't mistaken the person, how would this position ever have fallen to you?" Upon hearing this, Tatsuya Ye instantly flew into a rage. "You are talking absolute nonsense!" He refused to believe that someone as formidable and powerful as Ruka Yan could possibly mistake a person. "Do you think this is some substitute angst web novel, where people mistake others for their white moonlight?" I gave a faint smile and reached out to grab Tatsuya Ye's wrist. "We came to the Chu family today to find a necklace worth over 100 million yen. Did you forget?" Tatsuya Ye only then remembered before entering, so he gave a nod. "If we can't find it, we're calling the police." Father Chu, whose face was ashen and who had remained silent all this while watching his children make a scene, finally opened his mouth. "Are you out of your mind? Where on earth is there any necklace worth over 100 million? I glanced sideways at Father Chu. "Before our wedding, Ruka Yan gave me a diamond necklace worth over 100 million. It was only recently that I found out I had returned to the Chu family once before losing my memory, after which the necklace vanished." Father Chu trembled with rage, his stubble shaking. "What kind of nonsense is that? Are you implying someone in the Chu family stole your necklace?" "Hard to say." My gaze slid slowly across Chusei's face. "After all, even someone as alive and breathing as Ruka Yan, certain people wanted to steal. Dusong, please help me and Tatsuya Ye search this place room by room." Dusong immediately spoke up respectfully. "Understood." With a cold and stern expression, Father Chu stood up. "Without a search warrant, what gives you the right to search the Chu family home?" I tilted my head slightly. "Just the fact that the Yan family invested 10 billion yen into the Chu family for that plot of land in the south of the city. Is that leverage enough?" Father Chu's pupils contracted violently as he stared at me in disbelief. Was this still his eldest son, Chu Yuan? He felt so utterly unfamiliar, so foreign, that he didn't dare recognize him. He completely failed to connect this person to the previous son who used to lower his brow and obey their every arrangement. Of course, I hadn't actually lost any necklace worth over 100 million. I was searching for that little dark room from my nightmare. With a steady mindset, I led Dusong and Tatsuya Ye from the 3rd floor down, appreciating every single room one by one. Failing to find the little dark room upstairs, the 3 of us descended to the 1st floor. The rest of the Chu family sat with grim expressions in the 1st floor living room. Seeing me descend the stairs empty-handed, Chu Yechan sneered sarcastically. "Couldn't find your 100 million yen necklace? Do you want Chusei to buy you one?" I looked at Chu Yue-kan calmly. "All right. Right now?" Chu Yue-chan's breath caught instantly in her throat. Chu Yuan actually planned to make Chusei buy him a necklace worth over 100 million? On what grounds? "If you can't afford it, keep your mouth shut. It's humiliating." Chu Yue-chan was instantly provoked. "Who says I can't afford it?" With an ashen face, Father Chu barked a reprimand at Chu Yue-kan, shooting her a fierce glare. "Are you seriously planning to spend 100 million to buy a necklace just to give to him?" Chu Yue-chan snapped back to her senses, her face falling as she kept her mouth shut. Only Chusei was her precious younger brother. That hateful Chu Yuan could just drop dead. Tatsuya Ye stepped forward and patted my shoulder. "Kozue, don't bother with brain-dead people like this." "Right." I withdrew my gaze from Chu Yue-chan's face and continued searching the 1st floor rooms for the necklace with Tatsuya Ye. But the rooms on the 1st floor were quickly checked as well, and none of them matched the little dark room from my nightmare. Standing inside the final servant's room on the 1st floor in deep thought, I was suddenly startled by the sound of a dog barking from outside the window, which caught my attention. A pure white chow chow was tied up in front of a doghouse, barking frantically and excitedly in my direction. Tatsuya Ye, following behind me, looked at the affectionate scene of the pure white chow chow rubbing against me and said in astonishment, "I've known Kozue for so many years, yet I had no idea Kozue kept a chow chow." Dusong said indifferently, "This chow chow was sent to the Chu family by President Yan to keep Sir company 3 months before Sir and her got married." Tatsuya Ye grew even more surprised. Then why was it left at the Chu family instead of being taken to the Yan family estate to be raised? Just as Tatsuya Ye was about to ask more, He saw me, currently playing with the Chow Chow, turned my head to look at Dusong. His name is Continent. Tatsuya Ye swore he wanted to hold it in, but he simply couldn't help himself. Ruka-yan really knows how to play. Is she treating herself as a gift for Kozue to pet? I truly never suspected that the formidable President Yan had such a cute side. I took a deep breath, finding myself utterly unable to bring myself to call out the dog's name. I stood up and patted the Chow Chow's head. The Chow Chow had been exceptionally well cared for. Its doghouse was practically close to standard human bedroom specifications. Stepping inside to untie the dog leash, the moment I crossed the threshold, dark clouds instantly gathered over my face. The little dark room from my nightmare turned out to be this doghouse. A feeling of unprecedented humiliation and anger washed over me. Am I really the Chu family's biological son? How could anyone lock their own flesh and blood inside a doghouse? My heart ached so fiercely I could barely breathe, and I collapsed straight down onto the floor. Tatsuya Ye and Dusong's expressions changed drastically as they both ran forward, dropping into a crouch to support me. Kozue! With crimson eyes, I glared at Tatsuya Ye. They locked me in a doghouse. Tatsuya Ye's expression held a look of utter disbelief before turning into blazing fury. Standing off to the side, Dusong's expression instantly froze into a chilling, severe frost. The Chu family locked their Sir inside a doghouse. That meant during the period leading up to the wedding date fixed between Sir and President Yan, the Chu family had abused and bullied Sir. Colossal waves churned within Dusong's heart, though she didn't let a single fraction of it show on her face. Matters concerning Sir required a detailed report directly to President Yan. I slowly regained my composure, casting a cold, thin glance toward the Chu family members who were peering in from the direction of the back garden. I reached out, unbuckled the Chow Chow's silver chain, and walked back into the living room. Seeing the Chu family sitting upright in formal posture, I suddenly let out a cold laugh. I just went back for a nostalgic tour of the doghouse in the back garden. Don't any of you have anything you want to say to me? A nostalgic tour? What on earth did he mean? Amidst a dead silence, the three Chu sisters couldn't help looking toward Father Chu. Father Chu had originally intended to play dead, but since all three daughters looked at her, she had no choice but to give a light cough. Chu Yuan, there are outsiders present. I stepped forward and swept everything off the coffee table, crashing to the floor. And when I wasn't doing anything at all, Mother Chu could no longer contain herself, leaping up to roar, "Have you lost your mind?" I stared frostily at Mother Chu. I should have lost my mind the day you locked me in a doghouse in 40-degree heat without giving me food or water. So sorry to have kept you waiting all this time. Mother Chu's breath instantly failed her. Averting her gaze, she sat back down. What nonsense are you babbling about? I don't understand. Chuzé looked at me and asked softly, "Could your memories have gotten mixed up after your amnesia? You're my biological older brother, after all. How could we possibly treat you like that?" I let out a cold laugh, testing them with a bluff. I only forgot things related to Ruka-yan. I certainly haven't forgotten things related to the Chu family. Locking me in a doghouse, filming humiliating videos of me, and draining my blood for 20 years to sustain you, Chusei. I remember every single one of these things crystal clear. Chusei nervously cut off my words. Older brother suffered a car accident and lost his memory. None of us blame him for that. But older brother, please don't randomly assign things to yourself that never happened, okay? The moment Chuzé reached out to grab my arm, the docile-looking Chow Chow crouching by my feet launched into a ferocious bound, instantly tackling Chuzé flat onto the living room floor. Thrown into utter chaos, the Chu family completely forgot about me as they scrambled to rescue Chuzé from beneath the dog's jaws. A minute later, I lifted a finger and gave a gentle tug on the silver chain. The dog instantly turned docile, hopped away from Chuzé's body in the blink of an eye, and sat obediently back down by my feet. Hand-wringing and flustered, the Chu family hoisted Chuzé up from the floor. Chuzé's face was completely pale, his entire body trembling, clearly terrified out of his wits. Over the past 3 years, relying on the face that shared a 90% resemblance with mine, Chuzé had tried on more than one occasion to approach this Chow Chow, but every single attempt had ended in failure. He had even put on my clothes, Yet the Chow Chow refused to recognize him at all. With a pale complexion, Chusei stared with dead eyes at the Chow Chow by my feet that had resumed its docile, well-behaved demeanor. If this Chow Chow hadn't been personally delivered to the Chu family by Ruka-yan, he would have long since poisoned this ungrateful beast to death with rat poison. Losing her control, Chu Yui-chan rushed forward and roared at me. "You did that on purpose! You actually made this dog bite Chusei!" I gave a faint smile. Wasn't Continent raised right here in your Chu household all along? As an outsider, how could I possibly command it to bite people? I blinked, looking toward Mother Chu, who seemed to possess the lowest intelligence quotient. Perhaps it's because you once locked me inside the doghouse, and the dog and I ate and slept together in that doghouse, which is why it treats me as a friend. Is that a possibility? Mother Chu blurted out, "Impossible! Continent didn't sleep in the doghouse at all back then. Ever since Ruka-yan delivered this Chow Chow named Continent to the Chu family, you're the one who personally took care of it the whole time." Thank you, Madam Chu, for clearing that up for me. After all, my memories aren't fully restored yet. Since Madam Chu puts it that way, Continent indeed wasn't sleeping in the doghouse during the time I was staying there. Realizing she had slipped up, Mother Chu rapidly backpedaled in defense. "I never said you stayed in a doghouse. You're making all of this up yourself." They would rather die than admit in front of Dusong that they had locked me in a doghouse. Is that so? My bluff had pretty much achieved its purpose. Whether the Chu family admitted to it or not didn't matter anymore. My face suddenly darkening, I said, "Do me a favor and lock this shameless homewrecker inside the doghouse." Father and Mother Chu had hardened their hearts to lock their own biological son in a doghouse back then, driven by Chusei's instigation and egging on. Since that was the case, I might as well let Chusei properly sleep in the doghouse for a few days. Chusei's face instantly drained of color. "No! I don't want to be locked in a doghouse!" Father Chu said in a deep voice. "Chusei suffers from claustrophobia. Locking him in a doghouse will cost him his life." I said nonchalantly, "What does that have to do with me?" Ignoring Father Chu's earnest, well-meaning advice as if I hadn't heard a word, I said indifferently, "Dusong, what are you waiting for? Do it. Right on it." Without a shred of psychological burden, Dusong strode toward Chusei. "No, big sister, save me." Chusei was genuinely terrified of being locked up. He had witnessed the miserable state I was in when I was locked up back then. I had nearly died inside. The three Chu sisters hurriedly swarmed around to protect Chusei. "You are not allowed to touch Chusei." Mother Chu also anxiously hugged Chusei. "He is your own biological younger brother. Now that you're leaning on the Yan family and holding the status of Mr. Chu, you won't even acknowledge your own brother? Are you going to lock your own birth mother in a doghouse next? Let me tell you, locking you in the doghouse 3 years ago was a decision made by me and your father. It had nothing to do with your younger brother. If you've got the guts, lock me up instead." Without waiting for a new command from me, Dusong didn't pause for a single step, dragging Chusei straight out of the Chu family members' grasp. Before Chusei was even locked inside, the precursors to his claustrophobia began setting in. Breaking out in a cold sweat with a pale face, he cried out, "Older brother, I was wrong. Don't lock me up." Driven frantic with rage, the Chu family bellowed, "Chu Yuan, have you lost your mind? Chu Yuan, make her stop this instant." Just as Chusei was being dragged by Dusong toward the entrance of the back garden, Chu Liuyan suddenly stood up and issued a cold threat. "Chu Yuan, if you lock Chusei in the doghouse today, I will post every single photo and video of you living in that doghouse online for the world to see, so let's see how you plan to keep a foothold in high society." The moment these words dropped, everyone was stunned, including the rest of the Chu family. That idiot Chu Liuyan? Did she have any idea what she was doing? How could she have taken photos and recorded videos? Those were pieces of evidence. Chusei couldn't even begin to imagine if Ruka-yan were to lay eyes on those photos and videos. Amidst the dead silence, I suddenly let out a light chuckle. The third young miss of the Chu family has provided me with a rather excellent train of thought. I cast a frosty gaze toward Chusei. "We can change the game. If you agree to it, you won't have to go into the doghouse and suffer. What game? Chusei's wrist felt as though it was about to be crushed by Dusong. But no matter how he wept and begged, this damned running dog of the Yan family refused to ease up even a fraction of pressure. I gave a slight smile. Tonight at 8 o'clock, Chin-ran is heading somewhere. I hope you'll accompany Chin-ran there. Chusei froze. Was she planning to take revenge on Chin-ran while simultaneously taking revenge on him? A drop of cold sweat slipped from Chusei's forehead straight into his eye, stinging so sharply he instinctively clamped his eyes shut. He said helplessly, "Fine." Such a smart person. I turned around leisurely, and the 3 people plus 1 dog quickly departed the Chu family villa. "Chusei!" Mother Chu hurried to her youngest son's side, lifting him up with a heart-wrenching expression. Chu Yue-chan walked over. "Are you really going to go with Chin-ran tonight at 8 as Chu Yuan demanded?" She always felt something was fishy. Chusei raised a hand to gently wipe away the tear tracks from the corners of his eyes. "What other choice is there? There's no way to make Sister Yuyan believe that the person who kept company with her at the hospital back then was me. Otherwise, the person being protected unconditionally without regard for right and wrong by Ruka-yan's people today would be me." The third sister, Chu Luyan, rushed up and grabbed Chusei's hand, gritting her teeth. "You are not going!" Chu Yuan's personality has completely flipped. She definitely harbors malicious intentions. Lowering his eyelids, Chusei looked at the hand Chu Luyan was gripping tightly onto him, a flash of disgust flickering through his eyes. He had no idea his third sister had pulled off such an idiotic stunt. She was absolute trash. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Third sister, you must have heard the rumors about Sister Yuyan, right? How could you possibly take photos and videos of older brother in the doghouse?" Back then, hadn't she thought that after Chu Yuan entered the Yan family, he might complain to Ruka-yan? Back then, she had even deliberately made Chu Yuan look particularly hideous and wretched in the photos. The moment the 3 of them stepped into the villa, Dusong hurried straight over to Ruka-yan. With a rigidly tense expression, Dusong being someone who had followed Ruka-yan for many years, Ruka-yan saw at a glance that she had matters to report. Ruka-yan walked toward me, her gaze landing slightly on the docile, pure white chow-chow by my feet. "Why did you suddenly bring it back?" I stared unblinkingly at the woman before me without answering. Seeing the 2 of them locked in a staring match, Tatsuya Ye simply spilled the beans on Chusei's wrongdoings, because the little chow-chow almost bit Chusei to death, and the Chu family acted like they wanted to beat it to death, so Kozui brought it back. Hearing this, Ruka-yan knitted her delicate brows tightly. Taking a step forward, she pulled my hand, her eyes scanning my entire body. Only after confirming I didn't sustain any injuries did her expression ease slightly. "Did you have a conflict with Chutsi?" Recovering my wits, I shot back. "Weren't you the one who told me to go find trouble with him?" Having been married to me for 3 years, Ruka-yan had never witnessed such a prickly side of me. Yet whichever side of me it was, she loved it. Raising her palm, she let it fall gently onto the crown of my head to ruffle my hair. "Just make sure you protect yourself." I immediately stepped back with a frown. "Stop messing with my hair." With a look of loss, Ruka-yan withdrew her palm. Only then did she look toward Tatsuya Ye and say indifferently, "I'm heading to the study to handle some official business." With that, Ruka-yan turned and headed upstairs. Just as the servants were serving the dishes onto the table, Ruka-yan came down from upstairs. That stunning face of hers was covered in bone-chilling frost, and her entire body radiated a suffocating aura. I noticed Dusong trailing step for step behind her with sweat plastering her forehead, clearly suffering heavily under Ruka-yan's oppressive momentum. As her aura slightly receded, she said, "Kozue, eat your meal obediently. I'm going to take care of a matter and we'll be back later." Tatsuya Ye immediately brought up the matter of the haunted house amusement park that he and I were planning to visit. Judging by Ruka-yan's look, she was planning to drag Dusong along with her. How could that do? He and Kozue were heading out to settle accounts with Chin-ran plus Chusei. Without a bodyguard to protect them, what were they supposed to do if an emergency popped up? Ruka-yan had originally turned to leave after finishing her sentence, but a single sentence from Tatsuya Ye made her stop and turn back around. Lowering her eyes to look at me, she said, "Kozue, Aren't you the most terrified of ghosts? Why are you still planning to go to a haunted house amusement park? I had no intention of covering for Chusei. In the video you showed me, there's someone named Chin Ran. Back when we were studying, Chin Ran slapped me across the face. Ruka Yan's cold pupils instantly darkened into an abyss. Chin Ran from the Chin family actually dared to slap Kozue? A flash of utter despair swept through Dusong's eyes beside her. Why are all the disasters piling up together today? She had already arranged for 2 ambulances, wondering if that would even be enough. Forget it. Better send a distress signal to the second young miss. Maybe the second young miss will have a way to stop President Yan from going off the deep end.
Upon receiving the message,
Liu Yuelan drove, without stopping, toward the haunted house amusement park. I was still confessing my revenge plan to Ruka Yan. Originally, I had only wanted to lure Chin Ran to the haunted house park and have Dusong disguise herself as an NPC to help me get back that slap with interest. But after making that trip to the Chu family, I had extended a special invitation to Chusei to join us at the haunted house amusement park. Ruka Yan understood immediately as well. She then sat down right beside me and stated, "Go make the arrangements for the haunted house amusement park." Dusong acknowledged the order instantly. "I'll go arrange it right away." Since President Yan wanted to exact revenge on Chin Ran and Chusei, the haunted house park naturally needed to be cleared out. Furthermore, the surveillance cameras had to malfunction tonight, and the regular NPCs of the haunted house park had to be replaced by their Yan family bodyguard NPCs. After Dusong hurried off, Tatsuya Yi looked at the silent pair of us, me and Ruka Yan, and thought, "Damn me for being a blockhead." "Didn't you just say you were taking Dusong out to handle something?" Lowering her head slightly to type a text message to the departed Dusong, Ruka Yan put away her phone and said, "Accompanying Kozue is naturally more important." Tatsuya Ye asked with confusion once more, "Since accompanying Kozue is more important, why do you always abandon Kozue to keep Chusei company? And every single time on such important holidays, too." Ruka Yan fell silent for a split second, saying nothing as she looked out the window. "You should know that communication is the most important thing between husband and wife. You're always so silent, keeping things bottled up inside when issues arise. How is Kozue supposed to know what you're thinking?" Ruka Yan offered a single line. "I know that trust is the most important thing between husband and wife." Tatsuya Ye and I both froze in unison, never expecting Ruka Yan to actually utter those words. Then Tatsuya Ye was left speechless. "Yet you don't even give Kozue a single explanation. How is Kozue supposed to trust you?" "I trust Kozue. When Chusei showed me that video, I never even thought about demanding an explanation from Kozue." Tatsuya Ye drew in a sharp breath, staring in sheer disbelief at Ruka Yan. "So, Chusei showed you that video ages ago? When on earth did Chusei show you that video?" Ruka Yan's tone remained calm, as though she genuinely hadn't taken the matter to heart. 3 days before my wedding with Kozue." "Holy crap!" Tatsuya Ye slammed his hand onto the table and stood up. "So that bastard Chusei deliberately threatened Kozue into filming that video and then sent it to you 3 days before the wedding, trying to make you call off the wedding. Thank goodness Ruka Yan didn't call off the wedding because of that video." So his initial thought that Ruka Yan was Kozue's salvation was real. After all, while Kozue's grievances over the past 3 years were likely the handiwork of the Chu family stirring up trouble from behind the scenes. Remaining silent, I thought, then what about the diary on my burner account? How is that to be explained? It couldn't possibly be fake. And what about Ruka Yan dragging me to the hospital every 6 months to draw blood? Unable to figure it out, I'd just have to go search for the truth myself. During dinner, Tatsuya Ye couldn't wait to fire off another question. "President Yan, why do you always abandon Kozue on important dates to accompany Chusei? Do you have any idea that Kozue thought the person you liked was Chusei?" Back at the Chu house, Chu Ye-chan had roared out that sentence. If Ruka Yan hadn't mistaken the person, how could Ruka Yan's husband ever have fallen to you? Did past Kozue also believe that Ruka Yan had mistaken her person, which was why he had been so despairing and heartbroken? This time Ruka Yan didn't dodge the question, instead looking directly at me. Seeing that I was also gazing straight back at her, she spoke in a soft voice. Even though you never came looking for me, I knew the person drawing those pictures was you. It was you who drew a picture for me every single day to tell me how wonderful the world was and encourage me to keep living. So right from the beginning, she knew the artist was me, and the person she wanted to marry was also me. Ruka-yan thought for a moment. I never liked Chusei. I finally took the initiative to ask a question. Then why did you abandon me to accompany Chusei? Ruka-yan lifted her gaze to stare deep into my eyes, speaking in a low voice. Back when I entered the Chu family through an arranged marriage, I agreed to 3 conditions. Meeting with Chusei once a year was one of those conditions. Tatsuya Yi said with indignation. So he called you away every single year and deliberately picked your and Kozue's important holidays to boot. I seriously don't get it. With your status and position, President Yan, why on earth would you let yourself be blackmailed by the Chu family? Lowering her eyes, Ruka-yan dodged the question in silence. Tatsuya Ye was rendered speechless. Fine, whatever. Back to being Miss Silent. You deserve it when Kozue gets amnesia and tortures you to death. Compounding my emotions, I stood up and said, Let's go. It's time to head to the haunted house amusement park. Chinran and Chusei will arrive punctually at 8. After arranging everything at the haunted house park, Dusong immediately turned around and hurried off. By 7:30 p.m., she drove her car into the garage of the private mountain villa, stepped out, and headed into the living room. Where is she? A bodyguard replied. Stepping into the living room, Dusong instantly switched to a cold and stern expression. Third, Miss Chu. We meet again so soon. Pacing back and forth inside the living room with a pale face, Chu Lian stared at Dusong and demanded, Where's Ruka? Wasn't it Ruka who invited me here as a guest? Dusong shot Chu Lian a frigid glance. What kind of thing does Third Miss Chu think she is? Is our President Yan someone Third Miss Chu can see just because she wants to? We give President Yan face by calling you Third Miss Chu, but don't actually mistake yourself for some high society lady. Relying on Mr. Chu to sponge off the Yan family's resources while daring to treat Sir like that, Dusong deeply suspected whether the Chu family members all had brain damage. Turning pale, Chu Liuyan softened her tone and said, Could you please give your President Yan a call? I can explain about the photos and videos. No need for explanations. Dusong understood the intent behind her own President Yan's written command. As long as you obediently hand over all the photos and videos, that's all. Maintaining a veneer of calm, Chu Liuyan defended herself. I don't have any photos or videos. I just wanted to scare Kozue a little. Does Third Miss Chu think that because Sir lost his memory, we'll just act like nothing happened? I advise Third Miss Chu to be sensible. I'm still willing to reason with Third Miss Chu right now, but if President Yan arrives in person, Third Miss Chu is going to suffer physical torment. Despair sank deep into Chu Lian's bones. If she obediently handed over the photos and videos, could she really escape with her life? Stepping forward was an abyss. Stepping backward was hell. So what difference was there between an abyss and hell? By the time Ruka-yan received Dusong's call, she had already arrived at the haunted house amusement park. Shortly after, Ruka-yan walked over to a secluded corner and called Dusong back. The moment the call connected, Dusong's report came through instantly. Chu Liuyan refuses to admit it no matter what. I've already checked and found out that after leaving the Chu residence this afternoon, she headed straight to a musical instrument shop to visit her safety deposit box. I suspect those photos and videos are inside Chu Liuyan's safety deposit box. Ruka-yan said with a dark expression, Send the safety deposit box to my study. Lock everyone in the Chu family in the doghouse. Tomorrow afternoon, I will visit the Chu family personally. Dusong took a deep breath. Understood. After Ruka-yan finished her call, Tatsuya Ye walked excitedly toward the interior of the haunted house. The moment they stepped into the dimly lit haunted house, a man dressed in a white cloth sack with a terrifying horror makeup job appeared right in front of the 3 of us. Tatsuya Ye took a swift stride forward and tapped the white ghost on the shoulder. Are those 2 still inside? The white ghost NPC stood respectfully by the doorway of a room and said, Young Master Yi. Tatsuya Ye chuckled. The ghosts of this generation are actually quite polite. As he spoke, he reached out to push the door open. It was dead-bolted. Were they afraid Shinran and Chusei would escape? Thinking of this with mounting excitement, Tatsuya Ye threw a kick at the locked door, but it didn't budge. Tatsuya Ye turned around and made a polite gesture. "After you!" Ruka-yan remained indifferent, while I stood nearby and chuckled softly. Fortunately, the white ghost NPC had a sharp eye. After a brief moment of thought, he kicked the door open on behalf of President Yan. With a loud boom, the door collapsed inward. "Get away!" The moment the door was kicked open, Chusei's shrieks echoed from inside. Chusei came running out of the room, screaming, his entire body covered in crawling bugs that the NPCs had thrown all over him. Upon spotting Ruka-yan, Chusei thrashed about frantically, trying to shake off the bugs. "Sister Yuyan!" Two bodyguards at the doorway instantly blocked Chusei, preventing him from approaching. I glanced sideways at Ruka-yan, only to find her expression completely indifferent, not even sparing Chusei a single glance. Even if this woman wanted to put on an act in front of me, she'd at least subconsciously look at Chusei, right? Could it be she truly didn't care about Chusei at all? Looking on the verge of collapse and heartbroken to the core, Chusei cried out from the side. "The person wanting revenge on her today is me, and as long as I don't give the word, Ruka-yan won't care if I live or die." Gritting his teeth despite the bugs covering his body, he dropped straight to his knees in front of me with a thud. "I was wrong! Please let me go!" Chusei's face was pale, his whole body trembling as sweat soaked his hair, making him look as though he had just been fished out of a pool of water. After Liu Yilan had engaged in a friendly exchange with the two of them, she mentioned she knew that I and Ruka-yan were planning to settle accounts with them, so she intended to do a favor by leading them into the haunted house park to wander around as a formality before letting them out. As a result, ever since following Liu Yuelan into this room, she and Shinran had been subjected to wave after wave of attacks, even forced to feed bugs to each other midway. Shinran had cursed Liu Yuelan, screaming that this was a crime, but Liu Yuelan had simply smiled brightly and replied, "Wasn't it a crime when you slapped my brother-in-law? Wasn't it a crime when the Chu family bullied my brother-in-law? How come it suddenly becomes a crime when it's my turn? Oh my, second Miss Chin is making such a big fuss over nothing. I just brought you here to experience the thrills of a haunted house amusement park. Besides, you signed a liability waiver before coming in, didn't you?" At that moment, both he and Shinran had experienced utter despair, coupled with the terrifying feeling that even if they managed to walk out of the haunted house alive, they'd be crippled, until the door was kicked open and he saw Ruka-yan alongside me. He thought, "It must be Sister Yuyan coming to rescue me. After all, I possess a face that looks 90% like his." I silently watched Chusei kneeling in utter disarray on the floor. I had to admit the Yan family members were far more ruthless than I was. Compared to their methods, I was practically playing in the minor leagues. Chusei lay on the floor crying hysterically, unable to catch his breath. "Older brother, I truly know I was wrong. I shouldn't have fancied Sister Yuyan. I promise I'll never fancy Sister Yuyan ever again. I'll never compete with you anymore. For the sake of us being biological twin brothers, please let me go." Blinking, I looked at the miserable Chusei and chuckled softly. The trap today wasn't set by me, you know. It was set by Ruka-yan, whether you get let off or not. Tear-streaked and weeping, Chusei looked up at Ruka-yan. "Sister Yuyan, for older brother's sake, please spare me this once." Standing like a statue, the woman turned a deaf ear. The surrounding air instantly plunged into a dead silence. After an unknown passage of time, I finally turned my head to look at the woman. "Are you mute?" Ruka-yan slowly tightened her arm wrapped around my waist, her voice dropping into a low register. "Didn't Kozue just tell me not to speak?" The woman pouted with a wronged expression. Everyone else felt a flock of crows fly over their heads. I never imagined that a single angry remark I threw out in my agitation would actually be taken seriously by Ruka-yan. No wonder she had remained so quiet afterwards. Speechless for another 3 full seconds, I raised a hand and pointed at the kneeling Chusei. "Chusei is begging you to let him go." Hearing my words, Ruka-yan slowly lifted her gaze. A crawling sensation of numbness prickled across Chusei's scalp. Despite the pitch-dark environment, the chilling frost in her gaze made him feel as though he were plunging into freezing ice. Staring at Chusei for a long moment, Ruka-yan finally spoke in a cold voice. Why did you film that kind of video? I already agreed to your 3 previous conditions. Are you still unsatisfied? How dare you join forces to bully Kozue? Tears streaming down his face, Chusei wept. I'm sorry. I've liked you since I was little, which is why I wanted to sabotage your wedding with older brother. I'm sorry. I'll never dare do it again. Having survived this ordeal, he had no intention of staying in Jing City any longer. As for Ruka-yan's future wrath, he'd let the Chu family bear it in his place. Better you die than me. Tatsuya Ye ran out of the room, still looking somewhat unsatisfied. Seeing the miserable Chusei kneeling on the floor crying, he immediately chimed in with gloating amusement. Oh? Who are you begging for mercy from? Scarcely had Tatsuya Ye's words dropped when Ruka-yan's phone rang. It was Du-song. The moment the call connected, Du-song's voice came through clearly. There are a lot of reporters outside claiming they were invited by Mr. Chusei. Ruka-yan cast an indifferent glance down at Chusei. Since you invited reporters over, let's call it a day for now. Tatsuya Ye glared angrily at Chusei. Such a scheming bastard! He intentionally invited reporters over just so they'd see Ruka-yan abusing her power and bullying people with bodyguards, right? Before Tatsuya Ye could think of a good counter-strategy, Ruka-yan instructed coolly. Yan family bodyguards, wake Jin ran up and have her walk out of the haunted house amusement park alongside Chusei to accept interviews from the reporters. The Yan family bodyguards immediately entered the room to execute the order. Understood, President Yan. Qianran was quickly revived, hauled out in a disheveled state by the Yan family bodyguards, and dumped right beside Chusei. Taking a few steps forward, Ruka-yan looked down from on high at the miserable pair of man and woman on the ground. I was the one who invited the 2 of you here to play in the haunted house. Did you commit that to memory? Commit it to memory. Chusei answered instantly. Qianran, having never suffered such humiliation in all her years, swallowed her rage and replied, commit it to memory. Ruka-yan's tone was light and breezy, yet carried absolute coercion. Go accept the reporters. Interviews properly. Do not mention Chu Yuan by a single character, otherwise you know what happens. Qianran and Chusei shuddered in unison. The Yan family bodyguards very considerately hoisted the 2 of them up to their feet and even helped tidy up their hair. Yuzuru Liu walked out lazily, tossing 2 pre-prepared bags onto the ground. Change your clothes! Qianran and Chusei were furious, yet dared not speak, holding their bitter grievances deep inside. They had even gone so far as to prepare clothes for them. This was meant to make them swallow their bitter medicine in silence without any way to complain. 10 minutes later, Qianran and Chusei left arm in arm. Along the way, Ruka-yan had me and Tatsuya Ye sent back by arrangement before heading over to the mountaintop villa. When the sports car pulled to a stop at the entrance of the villa, Du-song, who had been waiting there for quite some time, stepped forward briskly and bowed to pull open the car door for Ruka-yan. Third Miss Chu of the Chu family still hasn't cracked, but the safety deposit box has already been pried open. There's a USB drive inside, which should be what Chu Liyuan used to store the photos and videos. One of the folders is encrypted. I didn't let them decrypt it, waiting for President Yan to unlock it yourself. Ruka-yan didn't utter a single syllable, but the moment she stepped inside the villa, it was as though she had transformed into a completely different person, walking straight up to Chu Liyuan, who was just rising to greet her, and grabbing her by the collar. The instant Chu Liyuan opened her mouth to call out Ruka-yan's name, she was violently slammed against the cabinet. Third, Miss Chu Liyuan let out a miserable shriek, and before she could even catch her breath after falling from the cabinet to the floor, she was pressed down into the back by Ruka-yan's foot. Ruka-yan calmly extended a hand toward Du-song, the USB drive. Du-song immediately offered the USB drive with both hands. Understood, my lady. The moment Chu Liyuan caught sight of that USB drive, the color drained entirely from her face. It's over. It's completely over. Ruka-yan slowly withdrew her right foot and walked toward the study on the upper floor. Send her to the doghouse. Take plenty of pictures. Keep photographing until I'm satisfied. Standing nearby, Du-song acknowledged the order. Understood. Entering the study, Ruka-yan immediately opened the computer, plugged in the USB drive, and entered the password. The encrypted folder was unlocked in no time. The woman gently rested her hand on the mouse, opening those photographs one by one in a slideshow format. The very second the first photograph appeared on the computer screen, the woman's eyes instantly turned crimson, radiating a terrifying, violent aura across her entire body. Standing outside the study door, Dusong clutched her phone and finally dialed that number. If my lady loses control, finding Sir is definitely the right move. Finding Sir is definitely the right move. She had never once witnessed my lady losing control in front of Sir. A single gentle word from Sir, and my lady would accept every single condition without a second thought. Inside the study, Ruka Yan stared repeatedly at the photographs over and over again. Her heart felt as though a massive crater had been carved out of it, the bloody sensation hurting more acutely with each pass. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, the woman spotted a video and clicked play. On the screen, under Chu Liuyan's torture, the young boy lay collapsed on the ground, his consciousness long since scattered, faintly heard letting out weak, fragile sobs from his lips. Senior. On the day he went to the Chu family for an arranged marriage, she seemed to have frightened him. He had stood awkwardly in the living room gazing at her, calling her Senior. Ever since their marriage, he had always addressed her like that. He had never called her Ruka, nor had he ever called her wife. But she didn't care about those things. What she cared about was the light in his eyes whenever he softly called her Senior. Ruka Yan suddenly leaned in close to the screen, her delicate fingers gently tracing the young boy's sweat-dampened cheek on the display. "I'm here," she murmured, as if offering a reply. Until the video finished playing, the woman's fingers remained lingering on that final frame of the boy's cheek. Ruka Yan played it over and over again until her heart felt completely numbed by the pain, at which point she finally let herself off the hook and smashed the computer directly. Having finished all of this, she pulled out a cigarette, stood up, and walked over to the window to smoke slowly. With crimson eyes gazing out into the dark night outside, the woman wanted to do many things, but she had Kozue now. Her mother's words from the eve of her wedding echoed in her ears. "Ruka, you have a family of your own now. No matter what happens from now on, you must always think of the husband waiting at home for you to return, the one who will care for and cherish you for a lifetime. Do you understand?" The sole occasion after her marriage when she had lost control and resorted to physical violence against someone had ended up terrifying her gentle Kozue. "Senior, what's wrong? Senior, please don't get into physical fights with people ever again, okay? I don't want to see Senior get hurt." Ruka Yan's vision seemed to conjure the image of the young boy looking at her with tearful heartache and that careful, cautious concern. All right, that was how she had replied. She had broken her own promise. Tossing away the unfinished stub of her cigarette, Ruka Yan fished out her private phone and dialed the single contact number saved upon it. Over at the lakeside villa, I was busy listening to Tatsuya Yefish for information from the old Mrs. Yan when my phone suddenly rang beside me. Old Mrs. Yan and Tatsuya Ye both turned their heads to look at me in unison. Tatsuya Ye wore an expression full of amusement. "Can't even handle being apart for this short a while? Is President Yan really this clingy?" I picked up the phone and glanced at the screen. Sure enough, it was Ruka Yan. Before my amnesia, I had her contact name saved as Senior, then blocked her once, and after unblocking her, simply saved her name as Ruka Yan. Pressing answer, I asked, "What is it?" Ruka Yan had gone to get the photos and videos from Chu Liuyan. I wondered if she had managed to get them. The moment the woman on the other end of the line spoke, my expression froze instantly. Her voice was so low and hoarse it didn't sound human, carrying a thick undertone of fierce restraint and suppression. Ruka Yan asked in a low murmur, "Did the Chu family treat Kozue badly? Did they bully Kozue all this time?" Recovering my wits, I felt profoundly astonished that Ruka Yan would actually pose this question to me. Could it be that she had been married to me for 3 years, yet remained completely oblivious to the fact that the Chu family treated me poorly? Ruka Yan's voice remained low, yet it carried a faint, coaxing undertone. "Then shall I help Kozue bully them back, okay? I won't get hurt." The fingers holding my phone tightened slightly. Since someone else wanted to step up and vent my frustrations for me, I had no reason to refuse. Liu Yuelan had already played things so ruthlessly. As the heir to the Yan group, Ruka Yan would undoubtedly pull off methods even more ruthless. With Ruka Yan stepping into the fray, Chusei was bound to suffer immensely, far more effective than if I had taken action myself. After I uttered that word of agreement, "All right," Ruka Yan remained silent for a few seconds before speaking in a soft voice. "Kozue, even if Kozue recovers his memories in the future." I wore a blank expression. Is she out of her mind? She's even recording this? Is she afraid that once I recover my memories later, I'll blame her for targeting my biological family? Rest assured, even if I recover my memories, I will never acknowledge this pack of wolf-like relatives again. Although I was born to Tianshengchu and Wafuichin, I've already donated blood for over 20 years to their most cherished youngest son, and I've allowed the Chu family's assets to multiply hundreds of times over. The debt of being raised and nurtured has been paid in full, but every single old grievance of how they trampled upon me will be settled one by one.
Continuing on the other end,
Ruka Yan said, quote, "Then I'll make another trip to the Chu family and be back a bit later. Kozue doesn't need to wait up for me." A moment later, noticing the call hadn't disconnected yet, I couldn't help asking, "Why aren't you hanging up?" "I'm waiting for Kozue to hang up." I felt as though my heart had been heavily struck by something all at once, experiencing a mixture of panic and a secretive, dull ache. I immediately severed the call right then and there. Tatsuya Ye waggled his eyebrows at me. "Kozue, isn't President Yan missing you?" Steeling myself, I replied heartlessly, "No. She just said she'll be returning very late and told me not to wait up for her." Just then, Liu Yuelan returned from her night run. Dropping heavily onto the single-seater sofa, she complained, "Why hasn't Big Sister returned yet?" "I've already finished running 5 kilometers, old Mrs. Yan chuckled. "Your eldest sister has matters to attend to and won't be back until very late. You should head back first." "Fine, then." Liu Yuelan agreed immediately. After all, her mother was right here, keeping the brother-in-law company. Glancing at Tatsuya Ye, she asked, "Coming or not, I can give you a lift." Tatsuya Ye snapped right back. "How about I give you a lift instead? How do you talk to people? And you're supposed to be top of your class elite." Liu Yuelan wore a look of utter helplessness. Such a hot temper, such a fiery temper. No wonder nobody looks twice at you. Scarcely had Tatsuya Ye finished snapping when he suddenly remembered that old Mrs. Yan was still sitting right here, and the person he was venting against was none other than old Mrs. Yan's daughter. He shot a guilty look toward old Mrs. Yan. To his surprise, old Mrs. Yan wore a smiling expression, as if she were simply enjoying a good show, completely devoid of any hint of displeasure. He couldn't help marveling inwardly. Kozue's high society mother-in-law is truly incredible. You rarely find a wealthy mother-in-law who is this kind and completely free of airs. Finishing his inner reflection, Tatsuya Ye suddenly asked, "Does Madam know that when President Yan went to the Chu family to propose marriage 3 years ago, she agreed to 3 conditions set by the Chu family?" Old Mrs. Yan froze. 3 conditions? I've never heard her mention any such thing. Tatsuya Ye was left utterly speechless. Ruka Yan had agreed to 3 conditions when proposing to the Chu family, yet old Mrs. Yan had no idea. There was simply no words for this. Glancing at me and seeing my expression remain blank, Tatsuya Ye looped an arm around my shoulder and said, "The Chu family demanded that she meet with Chusei once a year, which is why every single year, Chusei used a phone call to summon her away during important holidays belonging to Chu Yuan and President Yan." Old Mrs. Yan's expression darkened slightly. I knew Chusei was never a good-hearted person. Whenever my son-in-law suffered sorrow and pain, it was indeed all because Chusei was deliberately sabotaging things from behind the scenes. After a brief moment of stunned silence, Liu Yuenan muttered, "In this lifetime, Big Sister is actually capable of being threatened by someone?" The most crucial part is that the Chu family actually dared to threaten Big Sister. As soon as Liu Yuelan's words dropped, the 3 people sitting in the living room all froze. Indeed. Given the stature of the Chu family at the time, for Ruka Yan to personally visit them for an arranged marriage, the Chu family should have been nodding their heads in eager consent, instead of daring to pose 3 conditions to make things difficult for Ruka Yan. The crucial question was, why on earth had Ruka Yan actually agreed? Where did the Chu family get such massive audacity? Where on earth did the Chu family get such massive audacity? Liu Yuelan glanced toward her brother-in-law and made a remarkably firm deduction. Unless the Chu family was holding some sort of weakness belonging to brother-in-law over her head. For her first 22 years, Big Sister had possessed no vulnerabilities. She had been cold and unfeeling. But ever since marrying brother-in-law, Big Sister had started having a soft spot, putting brother-in-law first in everything she did. Mentioning this matter, old Mrs. Yan felt a pang of heartache as well. Over the incident where she and Chusei trended on hot searches, her father beat her into such a miserable state, ordering her to sever ties with Chusei and forbidding them from meeting again. Yet she stubbornly refused to utter a single complaint, only telling them not to let Kozue find out she had been beaten, which left her father with no recourse at all. Who could have guessed it was because she agreed to 3 conditions with the Chu family that she was forced to meet Chusei every year? Does she not own a mouth to explain herself with? It's enough to drive this old mother furious. Noticing the elderly woman was growing somewhat upset, Tatsuya Yi quickly turned to Liu Yulan and said, "Second Miss Liu, I think the time is just about right. Madam and Kozue should both be resting now, so please trouble Second Miss Liu to give me a ride home." Nodding and rising to her feet, Liu Yulan said, "Mom, get some rest early. We'll be heading out first." In no time at all, Liu Yulan took Tatsuya Ye and left the villa. Meanwhile, over at the back garden of the Chu residence, inside the spacious doghouse spanning over 20 square meters, the entire Chu family, excluding Chusei, was currently huddled together in neat order inside. Father Chu said with considerable indignation, "Those damned Yan family bodyguards actually cut off the power supply to the doghouse, turning the air conditioner into a useless decoration. They don't even get the treatment of that Chow Chow anymore." Second sister Chu Ching Ching recalled how I had been locked up for a whole week back then, and a sudden wave of regret struck her. Will we also end up locked inside by Ruka Yan for a week without food or water? They truly had gone a bit too far back then. Even if Chu Yuan had stolen Chusei's sweetheart, they still shouldn't have locked their biological younger brother in this place for a whole week. Now, not even a single day had passed, and she was already suffering beyond endurance. Mother Chu, Huafue Chin, was sweating profusely, while her heart felt as though it had been set ablaze. Why don't you properly thank your third sister? Originally, without those photos and videos, she could have claimed she only locked Chu Yuan up for a single day. Now look, ironclad evidence is sitting right here, and even if you wanted to deny it, you can't. Called out by name, Chu Lian felt deep regret as well. "Please stop talking in riddles at my expense. I got beaten up too." At that moment, her entire body ached. Why won't Mom look at how miserable I am? Just at that moment, the door of the doghouse was kicked open with a bang. Looking expectantly toward the entryway, the Chu family thought that opening the door to let in a bit of cool breeze would at least be comfortable. The wind would circulate quickly inside the doghouse. However, a mere minute later, the expressions of the Chu family members transformed drastically. Crap! That motherfucker Dusong was actually turning on the heating air conditioner for them. Seeing Ruka Yan, Huafue Chin opened her mouth to shout a couple of words, only to be interrupted by the violent crashing sound of Dusong punching a hole straight into the doorframe. Ruka Yan's expression was icy and indifferent, her gaze completely devoid of warmth. Seated upon the chair Dusong had carried over, she tapped her fingers rhythmically against her knee. "The 3 conditions you put forward back then, I fulfilled every single one of them." Staring at the Chu family members without a trace of warmth, Ruka Yan spoke one word at a time. "Yet behind my back, you still chose to bully Kozue." The entire Chu family fell into a state of terrified silence. With the temperature outside sitting at 35 degrees, once Dusong flicked on the heating air conditioner inside the doghouse, the temperature steadily rocketed toward 40 degrees. Offering explanations was useless, because Ruka Yan wouldn't believe a single word they said. Fixing a freezing gaze upon the Chu family members whose faces were twisted in agonizing torment from the heat, Ruka Yan thought, "Don't blame me. You were the ones who breached the agreement first." She couldn't care less about the suffering of outsiders. Right now, her mind was completely flooded with my miserable appearance from 3 years ago. She had to exact revenge on my behalf. Reverting to her aloof and icy demeanor, Ruka Yan cast a cold glance at Dusong. "Have Chu Liuyan start filming. Keep shooting until I'm satisfied." "President Yan!" Dusong immediately shot a glance toward the bodyguards, standing off to the side. 2 Yan family bodyguards stepped straight into the doghouse, singling Chu Liuyan out from the rest of the Chu family members and dragging her forward. "Third, Miss Chu should understand what Our Lady means, correct?" Handing the DSLR camera she had prepared in advance straight into Chu Liuyan's hands, Dusong offered a chilling, freezing smile. "If the footage isn't miserable enough and fails to satisfy Our Lady, third Miss Chu will have to face punishment." Hearing the word punishment, Chu Liuyan gritted her teeth inwardly. So what if it's taking a few photos and videos? Since Chu Yuan could be photographed looking so utterly wretched, I can do the exact same thing to the Chu family. Small matter. With that thought in mind, the moment the 2 bodyguards released their grip, Chu Liuyan clutched the DSLR camera and walked toward the rest of the Chu family. Her parents and her 2 older sisters were all about to become a part of her photography play. Tiansheng Chu's face flushed bright red, whether from fury or the scorching heat. He bellowed out loud, "Third girl!" Having lived over half a lifetime, he had never been subjected to such humiliation. Holding the DSLR camera, Chu Liuyan smiled bitterly and said, "Things have reached this point. There's no other way out. Just bear with it." If Ruka Yan reacts this strongly just from seeing those photos and videos, if she ever finds out about what happened even earlier, all hell is going to break loose. Therefore, their most urgent priority right now was to survive this hurdle and then go find Chu Yuan. Only Chu Yuan possessed the power to steady Ruka Yan, and only then could they be saved. Tiansheng Chu and the other Chu family members who wanted to voice objections all snapped their mouths shut, enduring the overwhelming humiliation while Chu Liuyan filmed photos and videos of them. After filming for a full half hour, Chu Liuyan convinced herself she had captured her parents and 2 sisters looking sufficiently wretched. But when she handed the DSLR camera over for Ruka Yan to inspect, Ruka Yan simply uttered a single cold word: "Not enough." Chu Liuyan froze for a second before saying in an ingratiating tone, "Sister Yuyan, this video is already way more miserable than Chu Yuan's was 3 years ago." An intense, freezing frost radiated from Ruka Yan's entire body, causing Chu Liuyan to instantly swallow the rest of her words back down her throat. The rest of the Chu family felt even more utterly helpless. Bringing up taboos at a time like this, you really are something else, third girl. Staring at Chu Liuyan with the freezing gaze one would reserve for a corpse for a full minute straight, a gaze so intense it left Chu Liuyan breaking out in cold sweat and nearly dropping to her knees in supplication. Ruka Yan finally spoke in a chilling voice. "Film a doghouse game video. She can film hers." Ruka Yan cast a calm gaze toward Dusong, "And you can film yours." True to being a confidant who had followed Ruka Yan for years, Dusong processed the instruction for all of 3 seconds before instantly catching on. Accepting the command, Dusong pulled out her own phone and switched it to video recording mode. Dusong kindly and dutifully explained President Yan's instructions. "Third Miss Chu, film the video as a doghouse game. You're in charge of recording the video, while everyone else is in charge of crawling around the doghouse." The rest of the Chu family were completely dumbfounded. Filming a video was one thing, but now they have to crawl around inside a doghouse? No, why on earth were they being subjected to this kind of humiliation? Vaguely grasping what was happening, a wave of panic washed over Chu Liuyan. Why on earth would Ruka Yan want her to film this kind of video out of nowhere? As soon as Chu Liuyan formed a hypothesis. Just as Chu Liuyan thought this, the rest of the Chu family thought the same thing, and thus, swallowing their pride, they reluctantly complied with Ruka Yan's demands and finished filming a segment of video. After finishing the recording, Dusong stepped forward to present it to Ruka Yan for inspection. On the screen, Tiansheng Chu and Huafu Chin could be seen crawling in circles inside the doghouse, accompanied by their 2 daughters, while Chu Liuyan stood clutching the DSLR camera at the entrance of the doghouse, capturing the wretched sight of the 4 of them crawling. After watching it once, Ruka Yan handed the phone back to Dusong, her voice devoid of a single ounce of warmth. "Reshoot! Chu Liuyan isn't smiling." The four members of the Chu family glared angrily at Chu Liuyan. "You hateful third girl, why weren't you smiling? Now we have to crawl through this all over again because of you. This is genuinely enough. Now I have to keep up a smiling customer service face while doing this too." Finally, after the third take was completed, Ruka Yan stood up. "Lock them in for 3 days." In that instant, the Chu family felt like wishing for death. What? Another 3 days? They couldn't even handle a mere half day. How on earth were they supposed to survive 3 days? Dusong murmured quietly, "With nobody steering the helm at the Chu group, we might run into some minor issues." The rest didn't matter, but Tiansheng Chu couldn't afford to be locked up for 3 days. If Tiansheng Chu failed to show up at the Chu group for 3 days, the senior executives and secretaries would likely track him down all the way to the Chu villa, creating a fair amount of trouble at that point. Raising her gaze slightly toward the boundless expanse of the night sky, Ruka Yan spoke after a long pause. "Lock them in for 1 day first. There's no need to rush things." Dusong instantly exhaled a breath of relief. Understood. Ruka Yan departed shortly after, while Dusong issued a few instructions to the Yan family bodyguards, before also leaving at a brisk pace. The Chu family members, who had previously been full of grievances and complaints, suddenly appeared exceptionally quiet at this moment. After an unknown passage of time, eldest sister Chu Yue-chen softly muttered a single sentence. So, back then, Chu Yuan was truly suffering terribly. The moment Chu Yue-chan uttered those words, Tian Shan-chu and Hua Fu-chin both felt their hearts wrench violently, while similar traces of guilt flickered across the faces of second sister Chu Qingqing and third sister Chu Luan. Back inside the car, Ruka Yan closed her eyes and leaned back against the rear seat in silence for a long time. Once Dusong drove the vehicle into the lakeside villa, she finally opened her eyes slowly, arranged for reporters to release the video. A hesitant look crossed Dusong's expression. Sir's surname is also Chu. What if Sir only has temporary amnesia and decides to settle accounts later on? Ruka Yan stated directly. Kozue gave his consent. I have a recording. With a helpless tone, Dusong replied, very well. Since that was the case, she would act as if she had said nothing, as long as my lady wasn't afraid of a backlash from Sir. Collecting her thoughts slightly, Dusong continued asking, when my lady arranges for reporters to release the video, is your goal to expose the Chu family for possessing such bizarre, specialized fetishes? Ruka Yan replied indifferently, correct. Once the public attention reaches a sufficient peak, the Yan group will officially cut off all cooperation with the Chu group to safeguard the corporate image of the Yan group. Dusong understood instantly. So my lady had her film this video to serve as groundwork for pulling investments. One could easily imagine that if Sir hadn't spoken up to save the Chu family, my lady could slowly play the Chu group to death. Understood? I'll take care of it. 10 minutes later, the moment Ruka Yan stepped out of the car, she walked straight to the second floor of the villa, standing quietly in front of the master bedroom door for a short while. 15 minutes later, the woman emerged, clad in a bathrobe, and returned to the door of the master bedroom. Reaching out to grip the doorknob, with a faint click, she discovered the door hadn't even been deadbolted. The woman's cool, aloof brow softened considerably as she lightened her footsteps and stepped inside. Noticing the small bedside lamp remained switched on, I was sleeping curled up tightly into a ball with my back facing the door, looking like a little mound that was both endearing and heartbreaking. Ruka Yan walked over, bending down to gaze intently at me. My sleep was exceptionally unsettled. The moment Ruka Yan bent over, I jolted awake violently from my nightmare, staring wide-eyed at the woman looming above and letting out a heavy gasp. Dropping onto one knee on the bed, Ruka Yan reached out to wrap her arms around me. Kozue, I'm back. Did you have another nightmare? My heart hammered like a drum. Are you out of your mind? Standing by my bed in the middle of the night making no sound? You nearly scared the soul right out of me. Ruka Yan pulled me even tighter, her hot breath ghosting across my face. It's your wife's fault. Kozue can punish your wife however you like. Wife? Hearing that word, my expression froze entirely. Was this considered her flirting with me? Prompted by some inexplicable impulse, I blurted out a question. Should I lock you in the little dark room? Very well. the woman agreed without the slightest hesitation. I wasn't that twisted. I gave her an annoyed shove, but she didn't budge an inch. "Let go of me!" In Rukayan's eyes, however, this simply looked like I was angry. After watching me for a moment, Rukayan pulled out her phone and dialed Liu Yuelon. Once connected, Rukayan asked indifferently, "How do you apologize to your eldest brother?" Nearly scared to death in her sleep by an emergency ringtone, Liu Yuelon sat straight up in bed. "Big sister, you're calling in the middle of the night to ask this?" Following that, Liu Yuelon offered advice in an exceptionally loud voice. "Kneel on durians. If you don't have durians, kneel on a keyboard." I was left completely speechless. I had every reason to believe Liu Yuelon was taking revenge on her eldest sister for disturbing her beauty sleep in the middle of the night. Rukayan, had she possessed even an ounce of sense, wouldn't have listened. Yet Rukayan proceeded to prove me wrong with action. Got it. Rukayan hung up the call, slid her hand out from beneath my waist, left the big bed, and headed straight for the study. Staring blankly at her retreating back, I wondered, did she actually go get a durian or a keyboard? Barely 3 minutes later, the woman returned. With a snap, the bedroom door closed, a keyboard was placed right in front of the bed, and she bent her knees and knelt straight down onto it. I bolted upright in bed, staring at her in sheer disbelief. "You're actually doing it!" Hurriedly getting out from under the covers, I reached out to yank her back up. "Yuelon was just talking nonsense. Did you actually fall for it?" Yuelon wouldn't talk nonsense. Rukayan held a fair amount of faith in her sister-sabotaging second sister. Every time Yuelon taught her how to coax Kozue, Kozue always ended up successfully coaxed. I was simply at a loss for words. No wonder every single time after my car accident and amnesia, Rukayan would tirelessly repeat things to me like, "I only like Kozue, I don't like Chusei. Are you insane?" Hearing stuff like that sounds deeply sketchy, all right? With that thought crossing my mind, I decided to deliberately make things difficult for her. If she tells you to kneel, do you listen to her or do you listen to me? Rukayan hesitated for a single second before standing right back up. I smiled faintly and climbed back into bed. A gentle warmth touched Rukayan's brows and eyes as she climbed in to lie down beside me. After a brief silence, I finally couldn't hold back from asking an off-topic question. The day I went to the Chu residence to fetch Continent, the Chu family claimed you only married me because you mistook the person. Why would they say something like that? I knew I had saved Rukayan on the rooftop when I was little, but Tatsuya had mentioned that the person who went to visit Rukayan in her hospital room day after day was Chusei. Furthermore, Tatsuya said I used to be very skinny and resembled Chusei, making it hard for outsiders to tell who was who. So how could she be certain the person she wanted to marry was me instead of Chusei? Rukayan gave a faint smile. Because back then, Chusei always brought your drawings to find me. Seeing that I liked the drawings he brought, the Yan family naturally assumed he was the one visiting me to chat every day. Although I never paid him any mind, I accepted every single drawing he brought. I blinked. "The drawings I made for you? You mean I drew them? But Chusei stole my drawings and brought them to you, passing off someone else's gift as his own?" Rukayan pressed her forehead gently against mine, speaking in a low voice. "Actually, I wasn't trying to commit suicide back then. I knew there was a safety air cushion down below." "Then why the hell did you jump off the rooftop?" Rukayan tightened her arms around me, a flash of remorse resurfacing in her peach blossom eyes. "Because you refused to leave, demanding that I step down from the rooftop, so I deliberately tried to scare you. I just never expected you to lunge forward, wrap your arms around me, and jump down together with me." I was exasperated to the point of laughter by my past self. If that safety air cushion hadn't been reliable, back when I was only around 10-odd years old, wouldn't I have been directly killed off by Rukayan's stunt? After a brief silence, I continued asking, "Does this include Chusei as well?" "Chusei cannot be touched for the time being." After dropping those words, Rukayan offered no further response. Unable to resist, I gave her a gentle nudge. "Why?" Rukayan coaxed me softly. "It's too late. Go to sleep." Clearly, she had no intention of answering my question. I pressed my lips together in annoyance. "Whenever Chusei gets mentioned, you stop talking, right? Who cares? Turning over angrily with my back facing Ruka-yan, I shut my eyes. Wrapping her arms around me, Ruka-yan coaxed me softly right beside my ear. Kozue, don't be mad. I've never liked Chusei. Shut your trap. I had heard that exact phrase a few thousand times already. Predictably, Ruka-yan stopped speaking, which only made me angrier. She refuses to let me find out, huh? I'm digging up the truth myself, starting tomorrow. Growing drowsy amidst my anger, I began drifting off to sleep. Not long after I fell asleep, my memories began invading my brain in the form of a dream. I found myself placed inside a stark white hospital room, a subtle ache lingering on my arm as if a needle had just been pricked into it. The sensation felt hauntingly familiar, yet I couldn't manage to pry my eyes open. Voices carried through from beside my ear. Miss, although the volunteers' HLA typing matched successfully, nothing beats identical twins when it comes to bone marrow transplantation. What is Kozue's physical condition? Sir's current physical condition is stable. He can undergo surgery at any moment. A wave of agonizing cramps violently surged through my heart within the dream, feeling severe enough to cause me to black out from the pain. I tossed and turned repeatedly through this dream, unable to wake up from it. The next morning, remnants of last night's dream still lingered in my mind. Following breakfast, Ruka-yan and I climbed into the car. Once inside, Ruka-yan instructed the driver. Drop me off at the Yan Group first, then take Sir to Jinhua Court. Upon reaching the destination, Ruka-yan stepped out at the Yan Group office building. Waiting until the car had driven off, I rolled up the partition window and stated to the driver and Dusong in the front seat. My stomach hurts a bit. Take me to the hospital I usually go to. I'm going to see for myself whether the HLA typing in my dream is real. Hearing my instructions, Dusong finally snapped out of her stupor. Sir? The driver glanced at Dusong before steering the wheel toward the private hospital affiliated with the Yan Group. Posing the question as if making casual conversation, I probed Dusong about my past. Dusong, did I used to visit the hospital frequently? Dusong answered truthfully, Sir's health is very robust. Aside from the routine medical checkups every 6 months, you didn't frequent the hospital often. I smiled faintly. Does everyone in the Yan family undergo routine medical checkups every 6 months? Dusong hesitated. That's not the case. Sir, I used to be my lady's bodyguard, so I'm not very clear on the specifics regarding medical checkups. If Sir wishes to know, I can go ask the family doctor. Offering a tactful smile, I replied, No need, I was just asking out of casual curiosity. A sense of unease crept over Dusong. Sir suddenly claiming he feels unwell and needs to go to the hospital while asking about the Yan family's medical checkups, it feels a bit strange. However, stuck inside the car at the moment, she wasn't in a position to message my lady. She'd wait until they reached the hospital. Before long, the Yan family chauffeur brought the car to a halt at the entrance of the private hospital. Walking straight toward the floor where I had been hospitalized last time, I asked the person trailing behind me, which doctor was responsible for drawing my blood and running tests over the past 3 years? Dusong answered, It's President Qin. He's in the director's office on the top floor. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Reaching the rank of hospital director meant this person was definitely an old veteran and a crafty fox. Right in the middle of the elevator's upward ascent, I received a message sent by Tatsuya Ye. Kozue, Chusei fled abroad overnight. Did Liu Yuelan scare him out of his wits over at the haunted house park? I felt a trace of doubt. Given Chusei's personality, he usually only stayed home to fish for sympathy. To actually flee abroad overnight? Regrouping my focus at that moment, I stowed my phone away and stepped out of the elevator. Dusong stepped forward and pushed open the door to President Qin's office directly. Catching sight of me and Dusong, President Qin immediately stood up to greet us with a smiling face. Ah, Chu-sensei has arrived. A violent twitch struck the bridge of my nose. This was the exact person from my dream conversing with Ruka-yan. For reasons unknown, this President Qin instantly struck me with a deep sense of aversion. Maintaining an unreadable expression as I sized up the President Qin before me, I stepped forward and took a seat. You must be President Qin. Indeed. I am Chu-sensei's attending physician. A few days ago, when Chu-sensei suffered a minor car accident, I happened to be abroad for studies. which is why I wasn't able to rush back in time. I smiled. "President Chin, please take a seat so we can talk." I glanced toward Dusong. "Wait outside and close the door behind you." "Sir." A growing sense of unease gripped Dusong's heart, prompting her to turn and step outside while immediately firing off a text message to my lady. Cutting straight to the chase, I stated, "President Chen, actually, my visit today is to ask whether the volunteers' HLA typing has achieved a successful match or not." I caught sight of President Chin's physique trembling slightly the moment the words HLA typing left my lips, making it abundantly clear that he was fully aware of the matter. Director Hata adjusted his glasses, perched on the bridge of his nose, his tone slightly hesitant as he said, "I do not know where Mr. Cheese heard this, but I truly have never heard of it. This is a secret between President Ruriko and him. The HLA typing was not even done in the hospital's name, but rather handed over to a third party. Even if the person right in front of me were to investigate, they wouldn't find a single trace. Yet last night, when my wife was drunk, that is precisely what she told me. She said the volunteers' HLA typing was successful, and henceforth there would be no need for me to donate bone marrow. In last night's dream, Director Hata had said that although the HLA typing was successful, nothing suited bone marrow transplantation better than an identical twin. An identical twin naturally referred to me and Chisato. A flicker of strange emotion crossed Director Hata's eyes. He became entirely certain that the person before him was fabricating stories out of thin air. "Mr. Cheese," Director Hata gave a soft cough, seemingly somewhat embarrassed on my behalf. I did not feel embarrassed at all. This Director Hata was indeed formidable. It seemed that without Ruriko's permission, Director Hata would not utter a single half-word of truth to me. I changed my strategy. "Very well, Director Hata. Should severe aplastic anemia be treated with a bone marrow transplant or not? Director Hata is the head of the hospital after all. Why is it that our entire family cannot get through to Chisato's phone anymore?" After taking a bath and changing clothes, Chin Hanhwa, having finally regained her freedom, paced anxiously back and forth across the living room. The other members of the Chu family had also left the doghouse not long ago. The entire family thought of their precious Chisato, wondering whether she had been bullied by Ruriko last night. As a result, none of them could contact Chisato. When they called, her phone was switched off. Only then did Chisei remember. Didn't Chisato go looking for Rintaro yesterday? Chisei immediately retrieved Rintaro's contact information and called him. The moment Rintaro heard that Chisei was looking for Chisato, he said, "Yesterday, Chisato borrowed 50 million yen from me, saying she wanted to go abroad to buy some precious gifts to make amends to her older brother. She should be on a plane right now." Chisei wore a look of utter bewilderment. "Chisato went abroad last night, without telling any of them." Chisei could hardly believe it, yet she vaguely guessed another possibility. Did she say whether she would pay back this 50 million herself? Rintaro had not taken the 50 million to heart. Chisato had said her older sister would help pay it back. At that moment, Rintaro had no idea that she would soon be asking Chisei for this money, nor that she would get into a massive physical altercation with Chisei that would trend on social media. Chisei's guess came true, and she suddenly found herself at a loss for words. "Rintaro, don't you have Chisato's number? Do get in touch with him later. We are very worried about him and afraid something might happen to him going abroad alone." Rintaro found this very strange. Wasn't he always abroad previously? Chisei blurted out, "In the past, our entire family escorted him to the airport and even arranged bodyguards for him." Rintaro was startled by Chisei's raised voice. "I'll check his departing flight again. The moment he lands, I will receive notification." As soon as Chisei ended the call with Rintaro, Chin Hanhwa, Chisei, Aoba, and Rui looked at her with eager anticipation. How is it? Chisei's heart was already filled with irritation. She said she didn't know either, only mentioning that Chisato had borrowed 50 million yen from her and gone abroad, claiming it was to buy precious gifts overseas to make amends to Chigen and Ruriko. A lie so absurd that not even an idiot would believe it. Chin Hanhwa was naturally stunned. Buying gifts? Why would one need to go abroad to buy them? The second older sister, Aoba, was also completely baffled, and leaving overnight without even notifying us family members. The third older sister, Rui, glanced at Aoba as if looking at an idiot. Last night our phones were all confiscated by the Ruriko family's bodyguards. How could Chisato notify us? Aoba blurted out. Having your phone confiscated doesn't mean it's turned off or unreachable. I just checked all of your phones and none of you have any missed calls. The eldest sister, Chizé, sneered. Forget missed calls. There isn't even a single text message. There isn't even a single text message. At this moment, the patriarch Chu Shunsheng finally spoke up. Jesse, what exactly do you mean? Chise managed a forced smile. No particular meaning. I have to head to the company. We'll wait for Rintaro to get in touch with Chisato before discussing anything further. She harbored a vague suspicion that the precious younger brother she had doted on for over 20 years might have abandoned the family and fled abroad alone. At that moment, the Chu Group's general secretary suddenly rushed from the villa's main entrance into the living room, trembling as she handed a tablet to Chise. What is going on with these photos and videos? Upon hearing this, the expressions of the Chu family members shifted instantly. Photos and videos were undoubtedly taboo subjects for everyone in the Chu family right now. With a tearful expression, the general secretary said, "It's you, President Chu, crawling in the doghouse. Now the shareholders are all swarming into the Chu Group's conference room, waiting for you to explain this matter." With a pale complexion, Jisei took the tablet handed to her by the general secretary. When she saw the millions of trending comments on the tablet alongside the video of their Chu family crawling in the doghouse, the world went black before her eyes, and she nearly fainted on the spot. Private hospital. Chigen had just finished talking with Director Hata when I finally ascertained that Chisato's aplastic anemia belonged to the severe type, posing a life-threatening danger at any moment and requiring a bone marrow transplant to maximize the patient's lifespan. Many thanks to Director Hata for clearing up my confusion. I know Director Hata is tight-lipped, so I didn't ask any further sensitive questions. I rose to my feet, preparing to leave. At that moment, the office door was banged open with a loud thud. The woman who had just rushed over from the Ruriko group still had beads of sweat lingering on her forehead. She pulled me into a tight embrace, then looked me up and down all over. Does anything feel uncomfortable? I looked at the woman before me, and on an impulse, gently touched the bead of sweat on her forehead. It was truly sweat. I gave a small smile. Just a slight stomachache, but it got better once I reached the hospital. Then I cast a meaningful glance at Duso standing by the doorway. Duso instantly lowered his head. There was no help for it. When the young lady had assigned him to the gentleman's side, she had explicitly stated that if the gentleman felt any discomfort whatsoever, he must report it to the young lady immediately. Should he conceal it and fail to report, the young lady would beat him to death. Upon hearing this, Ruriko's expression relaxed slightly, though she remained somewhat uneasy. She gently hooked her fingers into mine. "Shigen, let's draw a little blood for Director Hata to run tests and check." I pushed her away, and the tiny trace of warmth that had just stirred within me vanished without a trace. Whoever wants to draw my blood again can draw it from my corpse. Human blood. Did you think I was joking around with you? I looked coldly at the woman before me. The moment the word, blood, left her lips, I suddenly felt an urge to kill her. Where this urge came from, I did not know. I exercised such restraint that my hands, clenched into tight fists, were trembling. Both Director Hata and Duso felt that things had blown up in a major way today. Yet the next second, they watched as that woman, usually so unapproachable to strangers, reached out and pulled the ice-cold man into her embrace. The young lady loved the gentleman dearly as well. They were gentle and mutually respectful toward one another. What a pity that following a car accident, the gentleman remembered nothing at all. Whenever Duso thought of the gentleman's family members, his fists involuntarily hardened. It was all the fault of that younger brother of the gentleman's, Chisato, that dog of a scoundrel. Right at that moment, Director Hata regained his composure and smoothed things over. Young lady, although Mr. Shigen was physically frail and severely anemic 3 years ago, over these past 3 years the young lady has taken excellent care of Mr. Shigen. Ruriko turned her head, fixing a cold gaze laden with warning upon Director Hata. Director Hata swallowed hard, summoning the courage to finish his sentence. "Young lady, my meaning is that Mr. Shigen is very healthy now, and no longer requires blood draws every 6 months for testing. Hearing Director Hata's words, I froze slightly. Could it be that I had misunderstood Ruriko once again? Yet what on earth was the bone marrow transplant in my dream about? Only then did Ruriko withdraw her warning gaze, gently pressing against my forehead as she murmured softly, "I'll send Shigen home." I looked at her with complex emotions for a moment. "You go tend to your work. A driver can just take me to Kinka-en." Ruriko stroked my face. "Shigen is not feeling well. Shigen may be angry with me, but he must not mistreat himself." I suddenly felt a strong desire to know when this woman would ever lose her temper with me. "I am not feeling unwell," I said, the corners of my eyes lifting slightly. I was faking it. Ruriko's expression froze for a moment, followed by a softening of her brow and eyes. It didn't matter if he lied to her, as long as I was well and safe. Soothed by her into having no further arguments, I pushed her away and stood up. "I'm going to work." Walking over to the car, the driver waiting by the vehicle hurriedly pressed the button to slide open the rear door and stepped out to wait. Ruriko settled me into the back seat and fastened my seatbelt. "I have a meeting to attend, so I won't accompany Shigen to Kinka-en." I locked eyes with Ruriko's gentle gaze for quite a while. It felt as though, if I hadn't uttered that word of agreement, she would have kept waiting like that indefinitely. "However, I want to ask you a question. If Chisato's life is in danger, would you make me give him a blood transfusion to save him?" I stared intently into Ruriko's eyes, unwilling to miss even the slightest flicker of micro-expression. I watched as those lovely eyebrows of Ruriko's arched upward the moment I asked the question. Even so, she answered with absolute firmness, "Of course not." "Are you certain?" "If, of course not." Why was she frowning? "Even though you are identical twin brothers and both possess precious rare blood types, the Ruriko Family Hospital's blood bank has more than enough of that blood type on hand." I pressed on. "Then what if Chisato needs a bone marrow transplant? Would you make me donate bone marrow to perform a transplant for him?" Her thin lips instantly tightened. Did Director Hata say something to Shigen? Why would Shigen ask such a question? Ruriko sighed softly. How could I ever let Shigen donate bone marrow to an outsider? I felt a flicker of doubt. Was she speaking the truth or a falsehood? I thought back carefully. My alternate account didn't seem to explicitly mention Ruriko ever making me give Chisato a blood transfusion, only noting that blood was drawn every 6 months for testing. Yet now Director Hata claimed that my severe premarital anemia meant the biannual blood draws were simply to monitor my physical condition. Could it truly be that I had misunderstood Ruriko? Was everything just a bizarre product of my past self's imagination? I gave a sudden start. Could there actually be something wrong with my health? Averting my gaze from Ruriko, I gave a light cough. Just out of curiosity. Ruriko smiled. She leaned in and grasped my hand. The person I love is Shigen. 3 minutes later, the clingy Ruriko finally departed for her meeting. I breathed a small sigh of relief. After steadying my emotions, I took out my phone to find that Yetter had flooded my screen with messages and pictures. Shigen, look at the trending searches. Your President Ruriko is truly awesome. I swear this is the most satisfying revenge I've ever witnessed. It feels even more refreshing than slapping the Chu family 100 times over. I clicked open the pictures and videos. Skimming through them once, my emotions experienced no particular turbulence. My so-called biological parents and 3 biological older sisters. Yet up to this point, Ruriko had not touched Chisato, claiming Chisato could not be touched for the moment. Heh. I intended to make a move precisely to see what her reaction would be. No matter how sweet her romantic words were, I needed to see whose side she would lean toward when irreconcilable conflict arose between myself and Chisato. I immediately replied to Yetter's message. Don't overthink it. I just took a trip to the hospital and am currently on my way to Kinka-en. Upon arriving at Kinka-en, however, I found several individuals waiting for me whom I had no wish to see whatsoever. The Chu matriarch, Kiin Manhwa, took a swift step forward, reaching out to grab my wrist. Why are you only just getting here? She wore oversized sunglasses, concealing a pair of reddened eyes. Understandably, having served as a wealthy matriarch for so many years, this was the first time she had ever been made such a laughingstock in elite circles. With a frigid voice, I said, Mrs. Chu, please respect yourself, as I sidestepped away from her. Duso stepped in, swatting Qin Hanhua's hand away with a cold warning to the Chu family not to approach Mr. Shigen casually. Wearing an aggrieved expression, Qin Hanhua cried out at me, "What kind of attitude is that? I am your mother." Aoba hurried forward to apologize to me. "Shigen, we actually came here today to apologize to you. We shouldn't have treated you that way 3 years ago, but how can you treat your own family like this? Hurry up and call Ruriko to take down the trending searches. I am still your second older sister. I won't hold today's events against you." I stared at Aoba for a moment, as though looking at a mental patient. Aoba's eyes widened dramatically. Aoba stammered "you" for a long stretch without knowing what else to say. "Shigen, I am your mother. Back when you were in my womb, you acted like a tyrant, robbing Chisato of all his nutrients and leaving him sickly from birth. Yet we still raised you and never mistreated you. How can you discard us family members now over some minor grievance?" I cast a breezy glance at Qin Hanhua. "All of you Chu family members get lost." Too lazy to even look at this group of mental patients, I lifted my foot and walked inside, completely devoid of any awkwardness at being watched. If the perpetrators felt no awkwardness, why should I, a victim, feel any? Duso followed closely at my heels, protecting my back and deterring the Chu family from making any rash moves. Taking a deep breath, Chisei didn't dare get too close either. "We really did come to apologize. Can you please not harbor such intense hostility toward us? We are family." Arriving at the counter, I tapped my fingers lightly against the surface. "Chisato is the only one who is family to you. I was sold off by the two of you for 200 million 3 years ago. You surely haven't forgotten that?" Chisei couldn't help gritting her teeth as she retorted, "At the time, Mom and Dad were only doing it for your own good, wanting to test Ruriko's sincerity toward you. Since you care so much now, we'll return the 200 million to you. Surely you can acknowledge us then?" I narrowed my eyes with a half-smile. "Listen to yourselves. Didn't you claim Ruriko married me because she mistook me for her white moonlight? How did a 200 million bride price suddenly transform into a touchstone to test Ruriko's sincerity? Naturally, Chu Shunsheng would not apologize like Aunt Chisei and Aoba." Displaying the stern majesty of the family patriarch, he barked in a deep voice, "Shigen, now that our Chu family affairs have become the talk of the town, don't you feel you've lost all face?" Unintimidated by him, I shook my head with a smile. "I certainly don't feel that way. Your surname is also Chu. Your biological parents are still hanging at the top of the trending searches. Do you think those elite families in the capital aren't laughing at you behind your back? You should immediately persuade Ruriko to take down the searches. When she slaps the Chu family in the face, she is also slapping your face. Do you understand?" Since Chu Shunsheng had laid it out to this extent, if I didn't call Ruriko, it would seem I was kiwa, failing to appreciate the Chu family's kind intentions. Curling the corners of my lips, I said, "Very well, I'll call Ruriko." Upon hearing these words, the Chu family members unanimously breathed a sigh of relief. Aoba and Rui looked toward their father with looks of admiration. Indeed, ginger is spicy when it's old. I dialed Ruriko's number and put it directly on speakerphone. "Ruriko, were those photos and videos of the Chu family playing the doghouse game uploaded to the trending searches by you? They want me to speak with you and ask you not to stop them from trending online, you see." After pondering for roughly 3 seconds, Ruriko replied in a flat tone, "Shigen doesn't need to pay attention to them. I am currently in a meeting with senior executives regarding this matter. Once the meeting concludes, I will handle it properly." I watched as the entire Chu family took a step forward and asked, fulfilling their implicit wish, holding a meeting with the Ruriko Group's senior executives over this matter. What does this have to do with the Ruriko Group? Ruriko had already guessed that I had put her on speaker, so she continued. "The fallout from this incident has a detrimental impact. To safeguard the Ruriko Group's positive corporate image, we will be severing all cooperation with the Chu Group." As soon as those words left her mouth, panic seized the entire Chu family. Disregarding Duso's obstruction, Chu Shunsheng stepped forward and cried out anxiously into the phone toward Ruriko, "Ruriko, our two families have at least 8 or 10 cooperative projects. If you abruptly sever ties, it will cause massive losses for the Ruriko group as well. Ruriko calmly flipped through the project documents before her and stated without a shred of pressure, a mere 10 or 20 billion the Ruriko group can afford to take the loss. Unable to hold back her anger, Chisei issued a threat. If you truly go through with this, don't blame us for seeing you in court. This constitutes a unilateral breach of contract. Ruriko let out a light scoff. I'll accompany you to court anytime. I suggest the Chu Group's legal department first review the specific contract clauses for each project, lest you make a fool of yourselves in court. Chu Shunsheng and Chizei were both stunned. What did Ruriko mean by that? When President Chu and young President Chu are exposed in a doghouse game scandal, it damages the Ruriko Group's stellar image. Much like a celebrity caught in a scandal, any celebrity closely associated with them immediately cuts ties. This is known as cutting losses in time. The Chu family members were dumbfounded on the spot. Why they had played in the doghouse? Wasn't Ruriko clear on that? Yet she was actually shifting the blame onto them. Ruriko, it was clearly you. Chisei had barely begun when Ruriko cut her off. Who would believe that? The words Chisei had left unspoken were instantly choked back into her throat. Those photos had all been cheerfully filmed by the third sister, Rui. There was video evidence. Even if they held a press conference to clarify and claimed Ruriko forced them to film it, who would believe them? Chisei fell utterly speechless. Involuntarily, she glanced toward me. My lips curved upward slightly, and a fine, dense layer of cold sweat broke out across her forehead beneath the 18-degree air conditioning. Chushun said in a deep voice, Ruriko, have you ever considered that Shigen is also a member of our Chu family? You vented your anger yesterday. Why must you use the projects of both families as a joke? Do you know how many people's livelihoods will be affected by our joint projects? Ruriko seemed to let out a scoff. And did not answer Chu Shunsheng's question. Afterward, no matter how the Chu family members took turns or deployed a mix of hard and soft tactics, Ruriko acted as though she weren't there and offered not a shred of further response. With the Chu family members, throats parched and my fill of their performance, I chuckled twice and raised the phone to my ear. You go ahead and focus on your meeting. I'll play with them for a bit longer. Ruriko murmured a soft instruction. Protect yourself. Let Duso handle any physical beatings. With that, I hung up the call. At that moment, the Chu family seemed to finally realize that by making this call to Ruriko, I had never once intended to intercede on their behalf, but had instead been treating them like monkeys on display. Flying into a rage, Chu Shunsheng snapped, Chizei, you unfilial wretch. The next moment, a bone-fracturing pain shot through the wrist Chu Shunsheng had raised halfway into the air, and he let out a howl of agony. Duso forcefully flung Chu Shunsheng aside, fixing him with a gaze as sharp as a blade. Mr. Chu, if you ever attempt to lay a hand on our gentleman again, I will no longer treat you as an elder. Stumbling backward 2 steps, Chu Shunsheng was caught and supported by Aoba behind him. With my habitual half-smile, I said, didn't you claim just now that you came here to apologize? Is this the Chu family's unique method of apologizing? The brows of the Chu family members twitched in unison. They seemed to have entirely forgotten that they came here to make peace. Tilting my head slightly to reveal a look of sudden realization, I asked, when gaslighting fails, you resort to corporal punishment or even domestic violence? Is that how you gaslighted me for the past 20 years? Chin Hanhua opened her mouth, ready to blurt out the reason for her bias. It was clearly you who owed Chisato. Chu Shunsheng immediately grabbed Chin Hanhua and yanked her back, reprimanding her angrily. Go back first. Is that something that can be spoken of in front of outsiders? My brows twitched imperceptibly. Chu Shunsheng seemed terrified of whatever Chin Hanhua was about to say. What was he afraid of? Why did my biological mother and biological brother believe I owed Chisato? Where on earth did this debt stem from? Ruriko came to pick me up, and wrapped in tranquil peace, we rode back in silence all the way to the lakeside villa. Watching the woman bend down to change her shoes, I suddenly reached out, grabbed her collar, and yanked her straight toward me. I stared into her eyes. She looked the tiniest bit bewildered, unaware of why I had suddenly pulled her. After examining the face before me, a visage blessed by the heavens, For a moment, I spoke. "Did you know Chisato is missing?" Ruriko blinked and replied softly, "He's not missing." Those 3 simple words instantly drew a chuckle from me. Ah, so he reported his whereabouts to you after all. Mulling over the phrase, Ruriko instantly realized I had misunderstood. She hurriedly reached out to wrap her arm around my shoulder, offering a soft explanation. "No, it's just that I arranged for people to monitor him." I froze for a moment, the amusement fading slightly. "So when Chisato ran off, you received the news immediately?" Ruriko uttered a habitual "Amen." "I need a very important favor from him, which is why I had people keep tabs on him to track his movements at all times." "What favor?" The moment the words left my mouth, Ruriko extended a finger and gently pressed it against my lips. "Shigen, don't ask." Her tone carried no hint of command. Instead, it held a trace of gentle pleading. I stared at her unblinkingly for a moment before reaching up to pull her finger away from my lips. "I don't know whether I should trust you." Ruriko sighed softly. "Does Shigen truly not feel whether I treat him well or not?" Despite saying this, her expression and tone lacked the slightest trace of reproach. With a blank expression, I said, "Ruriko, the female lead in that murder mystery case, treated the male lead wonderfully, right up until the moment she killed him." I glared at the speechless Ruriko. "Since you need his help, why didn't you just ask him directly? He should be more than happy to help you. Surely I'm allowed to ask that much." Ruriko remained silent for a few seconds. "It's not time yet." My eyes widened slightly. Needing someone's help, yet having to wait in advance? I was somewhat lost for words. On an impulse, I reached out to gently hook my arm around her neck. "How much longer until you need Chisato's help?" 2 years, Ruriko said in a low, husky voice. 2 years from now, I guarantee he will never appear again. Director Hada said that as long as Shigen's condition does not relapse or worsen within 5 years, it signifies a complete recovery and a bone marrow transplant will no longer be necessary. Ruriko did not know that in my past life I failed to reach the 5-year mark, nor did she reach the end of that 5-year period. In the 5th year, a released on bail Ruriko appeared at her late husband's funeral. Her final dying words at the funeral were, Ruriko's final dying words were, "Bury me and Shigen together." During dinner, old Madame Ruriko placed a video call, beaming as she said, "I saw that you and Ruriko made up, so I came back to the old estate. Feel free to come home and visit when you have time." I nearly bit my tongue. Could it be that when Ruriko had pinned me to the sofa and kissed me, old Madame Ruriko had happened to walk in and catch us? And here I thought old Madame Ruriko was out playing mahjong. It's fine, old Madame Ruriko said, still smiling. I understand. Then she shouted to her unfilial daughter, "Ruriko, take good care of Shigen." Unable to bear it any longer, I swiftly snatched the phone from Ruriko's hand. Smiling, I asked, "Have you eaten dinner yet?" Old Madame Ruriko's face lit up with joy instantly. "Your dad is grilling fish for me right now. Shigen, eat more. Eating more is good for your health." Well, I won't disturb Shigen's dinner. Let me send Shigen a big red packet to celebrate Shigen making up with my unfilial daughter. With that, old Madame Ruriko hung up the phone. 5 seconds later, a transfer appeared on my phone. Wealthy benefactors certainly loved being arbitrary. Having roughly gauged this mother-in-law's personality, I sent a cute sticker saying, "Thank you, Mom," and tapped to accept the transfer. The moment I finished accepting it, Ruriko's work phone began to ring. Ruriko cast a brief, indifferent glance at it. Zhang Yujiao's voice came through. "The agreement terms between you and the gentleman have been prepared according to your instructions, and the legal team has also arrived. Do you and the gentleman have time for notarization now?" With a blank expression, Ruriko said, "Come over." Swallowing a mouthful of greens, I glanced sideways at Ruriko. "Is this the agreement we discussed that day?" Ruriko responded with a simple affirmative. A servant stepped into the living room, bowing deferentially as they announced, "Young lady, Special Assistant Zhang and the legal team have arrived." Special Assistant Zhang led the legal team into the living room. After paying respects to Ruriko and myself, they produced the agreement documents and laid them out on the living room coffee table. With outsiders present, Ruriko was in no rush. She unhurriedly let me finish the food in my bowl, watched closely as one drank my milk, and then picked up a towel to wipe my mouth with meticulous care. While Zhang Yujiao was long used to this, the attorneys on the legal team were witnessing it for the first time and were utterly dumbfounded. So their CEO was this gentle at home? Truly a sight to behold in this lifetime. Let's go sign the agreement. Ruriko stood up, took my hand, and walked toward the living room coffee table. Moments later, the couple was seated before the coffee table, with Zhang Yujiao guiding them through the agreement terms. After glancing over it twice, Ruriko lost interest. I, however, read it line by line. When I reached the clause stating, "The female party guarantees she will not divorce the male party nor commit domestic violence. Should she violate any of the above terms, all properties currently under the female party's name, as well as all future property income, shall belong entirely to the male party." A tremor went through me. Could it be that I had truly misunderstood Ruriko? Her affection for me was genuinely absolute and unreserved. One had to realize that once I signed this agreement, should Ruriko breach any single condition, I could walk away with every last asset under her name. After rereading it twice back and forth, I cast a tentative look in her direction. "I'm going to sign it, you know." Nodding in assent, Ruriko picked up another pen and inscribed her own signature beneath the female party's line. Executed in triplicate. With complex emotions, I stared at the 3 copies of the agreement, waiting only for my signature, then glanced over at the lawyer recording a video. Tentatively, I added, "Once I finish signing, I'm taking a photo and posting it on Moments, all right?" Ruriko nodded without a second of hesitation. In the end, because I was thrown into a baffling state of irritation over the agreement, I forgot all about Ruriko for 3 consecutive days. And 3 days were more than enough for Chisato's disappearance to snowball to massive proportions. Driven by the relentless clamoring of Chisato's obsessive fans, the official Weibo account of the Jing City Public Security Bureau released a detailed bulletin regarding the disappearance of the renowned online manga artist Chisato. Videos of Chisato surfaced online, proving that Chisato had personally purchased an airline ticket, strode briskly off a plane abroad, hailed a taxi, and vanished into parts unknown. The fans fell into total silence. The Chu family fell into silence as well. No, they were utterly shattered. With tears streaming down her face and a dazed expression, Jin Hanhua stared at the massive screen filled with irrefutable evidence. Why? Why would Chisato cut off contact with us? He has never done this before. Chisato, eldest sister Chise, who had long guessed that Chisato might have fled, remained entirely silent. Aside from Chu Shunsheng, who had gone to the Chu group to chair an emergency meeting, Qin Hanhua and the other 3 sat rigidly on the living room sofa, their eyes locked onto the looping evidence displayed on the big screen. Amidst the deathly silence, third sister Rui suddenly spoke up. Could surveillance footage be faked? She genuinely could not accept the reality that her younger brother had abandoned them and run off. Could it just be a misunderstanding? At Rui's words, Aoba's eyes lit up instantly. Shigen and Chisato are twin brothers. Their builds are extremely similar. It could very well be Shigen impersonating the person in this footage. Aunt Chu nearly laughed out loud. Shigen goes to work at Kinka Inn every single day, picked up and dropped off by the Ruriko family's private car. Where on earth would he find the time to impersonate Chisato? And impersonate him all the way abroad to boot. Impersonate him all the way abroad to boot. Rui grew frantic instantly. The Ruriko family's influence is massive. Pulling off a minor cover-up like this is child's play. Besides, ever since Shigen lost his memory in the car accident, he's been like a completely different person, single-mindedly targeting us and treating us like enemies. The current Shigen is entirely capable of pulling off something like this. Enduring her anger, Chise snapped, "Have you all lost your minds from panic? Ruriko made a move against us because our locking Shigen in the doghouse was exposed. She is venting her anger on Shigen's behalf. But she would never dare touch Chisato right now. Don't you remember why she agreed to those 3 conditions back then?" As soon as Chizi uttered those words, the complexions of third sister Aoba and Rui shifted dramatically, and even Qin Hanhua, sobbing off to the side, subconsciously silenced herself. Chise let out a long breath of turbid air. As long as Director Hada remains in good shape, This secret won't be pierced. The moment Chisei's words landed, hurried footsteps rang out at the entrance. The Ruriko family had arrived. The entire Chu family stiffened, their gazes turning in unison toward the living room entrance. Right behind the Chu butler walked Duso, the Ruriko head butler whom they loathed to the marrow of their bones, carrying a thick folder. Chisei's scalp tingled instantly. Surely Duso hadn't heard what she just said, had he? Casting a frigid glance at Chisei without a word, Duso stepped forward and tossed the folder in his hand onto the coffee table before the Chu family. With a blank expression, he said, "The young lady instructed me to deliver photos of Chisato vacationing in a foreign resort town to the Chu family, lest the parents and sisters who love him so dearly worry about his safety." The Chu family kept quiet. This was classic psychological torture by Ruriko, forcing them to witness firsthand just how leisurely and comfortable Chisato was abroad while they were enduring her wrath. Duso added, "Oh, right. I heard Chisato borrowed 50 million yen from the Chin family young lady, and since the Chin family young lady might be experiencing tight cash flow these past couple of days, she'll likely come knocking for her debt very soon. You'd best prepare to pay up." Without caring about the Chu family's reactions, Duso turned and left. The Chu family sat frozen in collective silence. Finally, with trembling fingers, Manhwa unsealed the folder, causing photograph after photograph to spill out. Chisato's refined and handsome face appeared from various angles across different photos, complete with clear timestamps and looking utterly unblemished and unlaminated. Manhwa's tears became completely uncontrollable. Her trembling fingers clutched photo after photo, desperate to prove they were fake, yet the pictures were as authentic as reality could possibly be. Faced with ironclad proof, Rui and Aoba turned ashen-faced and rigid, completely bereft of any excuses to exonerate Chisato. With an impulsive flash of temper, Aoba smashed her fist into the glass coffee table, shattering it. "Why? We only set traps to deceive Ruriko because of Chisato, so how could Chisato just walk away like this? Terrified of the fallout and of facing Ruriko's wrath and revenge, are we family members supposed to be the ones who deservedly take the fall for him?" "Stop talking!" Manhwa clapped a hand over her mouth, closing her eyes in agony as tears continued to stream downward. "In the dead of night, jolting awake with a sharp cry, I sat bolt upright in bed. Countless syringes and oceans of blood from my dream left me drenched in cold sweat. Struggling to steady myself, I realized the Ruriko koala was nowhere beside me. I brushed the sweat from my brow with my sleeve, checked the time on my phone, and wondered, where would Ruriko go at this hour? Plagued by a hint of perplexity, I stepped out of the master bedroom and heard low voices drifting down from the third floor. Instantly holding my breath, I lightened my steps and mounted the staircase. As I drew closer to the third-floor study, I finally caught Duso's voice clearly. "Chin-ran is facing financial difficulties and will soon go to the Chu family to demand her debt, but the Chu family is currently short on cash as well and may not repay this massive sum, which will inevitably lead to a conflict. I have already arranged for paparazzi to keep a secret watch on Chin-ran, so we can land them both on the trending searches when the time comes." Pausing for a moment, Duso added cautiously, "However, I accidentally overheard Chu Chisei mention Director Hata while at the Chu residence." My brow twitched fiercely. President Hojo? Why would Chizuru mention him? Hearing that faint gasp from outside the door, Yuka stood up instantly. Dropping those words, she strode out of the study and, sure enough, saw me standing there at the top of the stairs. At that moment, Soda stepped out of the study and called out in a low, respectful voice. Taking my hand as if to head down the stairs, Yuka asked with a puzzled look, "Why did Chizuru mention President Hojo?" Yuka pressed a finger to her lips, glancing sideways at Soda with a hint of an unspoken warning. Though he kept his gaze lowered, Soda sensed it and answered softly, "Sir, when I arrived at the entrance of the Chizuru family's villa, she happened to be saying the name President Hojo. But the moment she saw me enter, she stopped and didn't say any more." "Never mind," Yuka said, taking my hand and pulling me along. Soda waited in place for a moment. Hearing the door to the second-floor master bedroom close, He let out a soft sigh and hurried downstairs to leave. In truth, he had heard Chizuru's exact words loud and clear back then. After returning to the room, Yuka turned off the lights and wrapped her arms around me from behind. I quickly drifted off to sleep in her embrace. Time ticked away second by second, and at 5 in the morning, I suddenly sat bolt upright. Yuka woke up instantly. Just as she was about to call out Kozue, she sharply noticed that my movements were stiff and my expression was almost entirely blank. After sitting rigidly upright for a moment as if in a daze, I threw off the blanket and got out of bed. I walked toward the master bedroom door and headed straight downstairs, my eyes appearing somewhat hollow. All the signs pointed to Kozue sleepwalking. Yuka had heard that sleepwalkers should never be woken up suddenly, as it could shock them and even put their lives in danger. Keeping her composure, Yuka stepped lightly and followed behind me. After wandering aimlessly in a circle without seeming to find what she was looking for, she reluctantly headed from the back door toward the direction of the rear garden. Wearing my pajamas, I searched all the way through the back garden until I finally stopped in front of a sea of pink baby's breath. Looking at the pink blossoms before me, I suddenly raised my foot and began to step on them, repeatedly trampling them back and forth. A complex flash crossed Yuka's eyes. I love baby's breath so much. When we were decorating the lakeside villa, I said I wanted to plant flowers in the back garden, and she said okay. So I planted an entire field of baby's breath. Pink baby's breath is my expression of sincerity toward my upperclassmen. She had once asked Tsukuran, and Tsukuran said it meant pure and beautiful love, the meaning of a first love. Just as Yuka was lost in these memories. I trampled the pink baby's breath to ruin and began walking back. I quickly reached the kitchen, muttering something under my breath as my thick fingers gripped the handle of the meat cleaver lying beside the cutting board. Following into the kitchen, Yuka's pupils instantly contracted when she saw the knife in my hand. She called out my name softly and walked slowly toward me. "The knife is too dangerous. Let me hold it for you, okay?" As if she hadn't heard Yuka's voice or even seen her standing there, I raised the knife and brought it down toward my right wrist. Yuka gripped the blade tightly with her bare hand, and fresh blood slowly seeped out from between her fingers. Catching sight of the blood, I gave a violent start. As if snapped out of a trance, I let out a sharp cry and collapsed limply. Throwing the knife from her palm, Yuka moved with practiced agility to catch me. She looked down with a heart-wrenching gaze at my pale face as I fainted in the crook of her arm. Taking a deep breath, Yuka scooped me up in a bridal carry and headed to the garage. She placed me in the passenger seat, fastened my seatbelt, and drove toward the hospital at a steady speed. At the same time, she dialed through the car phone and said in an icy tone, "Kozue just sleepwalked and fainted. Go pick up President Hojo and bring him to the hospital to examine Kozue." Soda was startled, then mustered the courage to say, "What I heard Chizuru say at the front gate today, I suggest the master temporarily shouldn't let President Hojo examine him." Receiving no reply for a long moment, Soda had to remind her again, "Milady, the family doctor lives right at the old estate." Yuka's voice sounded as though it were steeped in frost. "Notify them to get ready." Hanging up the phone, Yuka made a U-turn with the car, which was already nearing the hospital, and headed toward the Yanagi family's old estate instead. By the time Yuka drove into the old estate and carefully carried me out of the car, the entire Yanagi household, along with the family doctor, had lined up waiting at the entrance. The moment the elder Mrs. Yanagi saw Yuka carrying me, her eyes turned red as she stepped forward, asking with anguish, "How on earth did Kozue start sleepwalking?" Before Yuka could answer, the elder Mr. Yanagi's expression shifted drastically. "Why is there so much blood?" The elder Mrs. Yanagi nearly fainted on the spot. "What? Kozue is hurt? That rebellious girl." "It's not Kozue's blood," Yuka said, frowning as she walked toward the living room. The married family doctors immediately followed behind, one carrying a medicine kit and the other holding a stethoscope. Yuka carefully laid me down on the living room sofa, then sat right beside me, pulling me back into her arms. Under Yuka's piercing gaze, the male family doctor tried his best to maintain his composure as he gave me a brief checkup and listened to my heartbeat for a moment. "Milady can rest easy. Mr. Chizuru's mental state suffered a mild shock, but he is currently in good condition. Once he wakes up, A bowl of calming broth will set everything right. Hearing the doctor's diagnosis, the entire Yanagi family let out massive sighs of relief. Staring fixedly at the doctor, Yuka asked, "Why did he start sleepwalking? In the 3 years since our marriage, he has never done this once." The male doctor glanced at his wife. Seeing her give a subtle nod, he swallowed his hesitation and spoke the truth under the mounting pressure. There are many factors that cause sleepwalking. It depends on Mr. Chizuru's usual psychological state. To put it simply, sleepwalking is divided into childhood and adult cases. Childhood sleepwalking usually disappears as a person grows older, but adult sleepwalking is classified as a medical condition. Adult sleepwalking is almost entirely caused by psychological stress, let alone the fact that in Mr. Chizuru's case, blood was involved. Realizing that the injured person was actually the eldest daughter herself, meaning there was dangerous behavior involved, and that the daughter had only been injured because she tried to stop him, it was proof enough that Mr. Chizuru was under a tremendous amount of mental strain. Hearing the doctor's words, the elder Mrs. Yanagi gasped. "You mean Kozue isn't happy? Kozue is carrying a lot of pain inside?" Yanagi Tsukiran suddenly chimed in. "I had a classmate with severe sleepwalking disorder. After he sleepwalked and injured an innocent passerby, he was locked away in a psychiatric hospital. They called it some kind of schizophrenia." Nearly half the people in the living room suddenly whipped their heads around and bellowed at her. Tsukiran fell flat on her rear end, frightened out of her wits. "You're gonna scare me to death." Holding me, Yuka stood up. "I'm gonna take Kozue upstairs to rest first. I'll be right back down." Casting a chilling glance at Soda, she added, "Go bring President Hojo here directly. Do not make me repeat myself." Dropping those words, Yuka left with me in her arms. Before the order could even fully register, Soda wiped away a cold sweat, spun around, and ran off to seize the man. Yuka's expression and tone sent an unusual chill through the Yanagi family. They knew something major had happened, because Yuka's words clearly meant that the entire family was being summoned for an emergency household meeting. The last time they had a family meeting was 3 years ago, when Yuka announced she was getting married. What kind of major event could this one possibly be? Watching her eldest sister's retreating figure from the floor, Tsukiran muttered, "Big sis seems to be talking a lot more lately." The elder Mr. Yanagi said coldly, "Your big sis is just self-controlled and reserved, not naturally mute. When she was little, she talked plenty. She was quite the chatterbox." Tsukiran was left speechless. She wanted no part of this anymore. In this household, she was always the target of yelling and scolding. Sure enough, in a family with 3 children, the middle child was forever the overlooked punching bag. The third daughter, Yanagi Mengyao, then dropped a nonchalant remark. "President Hojo is a relative introduced by the Chizuru family 3 years ago. It looks like the Chizurus have grown tired of living, daring to lay hands on the person Big Sis cares about most." The elder Mr. Yanagi's expression turned thoroughly glacial. Even the densest of them all, Tsukiran, finally began to piece things together. "That's right. Big Sis sending Soda out in the middle of the night to drag President Hojo back. Doesn't that mean President Hojo did something wrong and it's related to our brother-in-law?" Realizing this, Tsukiran lost her composure entirely. Scrambling up from the floor, she shouted, "Aside from Steward Soda." Steward Soda dutifully brewed a batch of invigorating tea and placed it before everyone. Yuka's expression and tone sent an unusual chill through the Yanagi family. They knew something major had happened, because Yuka's words clearly meant that the entire family was being summoned for an emergency household meeting. The last time they had a family meeting was 3 years ago, when Yuka announced she was getting married. What kind of major event could this one possibly be? Watching her eldest sister's retreating figure from the floor, Tsukiran muttered, "Big Sis seems to be talking a lot more lately." The elder Mr. Yanagi said coldly, "Your big sis is just self-controlled and reserved, not naturally mute. When she was little, she talked plenty. She was quite the chatterbox." Tsukiran was left speechless. She wanted no part of this anymore. In this household, she was always the target of yelling and scolding. Sure enough, in a family with 3 children, the middle child was forever the overlooked punching bag. The third daughter, Yanagi Mengyao, then dropped a nonchalant remark. "President Hojo is a relative introduced by the Chizuru family 3 years ago. It looks like the Chizuras have grown tired of living, daring to lay hands on the person Big Sis cares about most. The elder Mr. Yanagi's expression turned thoroughly glacial. Even the densest of them all, Sukiran, finally began to piece things together. That's right. Big Sis sending Soda out in the middle of the night to drag President Hojo back. Doesn't that mean President Hojo did something wrong, and it's related to our brother-in-law? Losing her composure entirely, Sukiran scrambled up from the floor and yelled, "Aside from Steward Soda, everyone else cleared out." All the irrelevant personnel immediately withdrew from the Yanagi living room. Steward Soda dutifully brewed a batch of invigorating tea and placed it before everyone. Not long after, Yuka came back down from the second floor and sat down, prompting everyone to turn their gaze toward her in unison. The elder Mrs. Yanagi was worried about her son-in-law, but she was also concerned for her daughter. Catching sight of her daughter's hand without even a bandage on it, she furrowed her brow. "Your hand really needs to." A single sentence from Yuka abruptly cut off the elder Mrs. Yanagi's concern. "Mom." The elder Mrs. Yanagi was momentarily thrown off. "We already know Kozue has a sleepwalking disorder, you know." The elder Mr. Yanagi instantly picked up on the discordant tone. Frowning, he asked, "What illness?" Clenching her hand slightly, Yuka answered, "Aplastic anemia. It requires long-term hospitalization or even blood transfusions to sustain life." The elder Mrs. Yanagi sprang up from her seat. "You mean a disease like leukemia?" Yuka shook her head. "Not that severe. Mild cases can be cured through medication and blood transfusions. Furthermore, Kozue hasn't progressed to severe aplastic anemia. As long as he doesn't relapse within 5 years, he can recover and live a normal life. Otherwise, a bone marrow transplant is his only lifeline." The elder Mrs. Yanagi let out a massive sigh of relief. "No wonder you've given the Chizuras whatever they've asked for over the past 3 years. Even when Chizuru Show deliberately dragged you into trending online searches, you turned a blind eye. It was all for show, bone marrow, wasn't it?" Yuka told the truth. 3 years ago, after I married into the Chizuru family, they flat out refused. Afterward, I used certain methods to suppress the Chizuru company, which finally forced them to come to me. That's when the Chizuras put forward 3 conditions. To have the Chizuru group go public, to accept a meeting request from Chizuru Show once every year for 5 years, and to adapt Chizuru Show as 10-year unrequited love comic onto the big screen under the banner of the Yanagi group. As for Hojo Shizuo, he was Kozue's attending physician since childhood, so I offered him a high salary to join the private hospital under the Yanagi umbrella, because he is the most familiar with Kozue's medical history. At this point, Yuka lowered her gaze. Yet it seems I made a mistake. The Chizuras tormented Kozue, threatening him into filming that video where he claimed to hate her and love Hozo Ran instead, and Sho tried to use that footage. Now that even Kozue's attending physician, Hojo Shisuo, is involved, there must be an even bigger problem lurking behind this. Hearing Yuka's explanation, the Yanagi family was utterly shocked. They never imagined that behind what looked like a warm marriage lay such a twisted web of hidden secrets. The elder Mrs. Yanagi was the first to snap back to reality. In a sudden fit of rage, she grabbed a teacup, ready to hurl it at Yuka. "Such a massive matter, and you bore it all in silence for 3 years?" But before her hand could even reach the apex of its swing, the elder Mr. Yanagi intercepted it. "You know what kind of temperament Yuka has. Besides, she did it for Kozue's own good." The elder Mrs. Yanagi was so furious she could barely breathe. "For Kozue's own good?" Her idea of doing it for his good is letting herself get dragged into trending scandals with Chizuru Show, making Kozue mistakenly think she was cheating and leaving him heartbroken and miserable. Kozue's mental health broke down to the point of developing a sleepwalking disorder. Do you have any idea how much heartache it takes to reach that point? The elder Mr. Yanagi hurriedly patted his wife's back. "All right, calm down. Just how old are you to be throwing fits like this?" The third daughter, Yanagi Mengyao, let out a light yawn. "Big sis Yuka, so how exactly did you figure out there's something wrong with Hojo Shisuo?" Yuka paused slightly. "Soda went to the Chizuru household yesterday and accidentally overheard Chizuru say, 'As long as President Hojo is still fine, this matter hasn't been exposed.'" A flash of chilling sharpness swept through Mengyao's eyes. Obviously, what Chizuru meant by that was, as long as Big Sis hasn't made a move against Hojo Shizuo, it means Big Sis still doesn't know about this. The elder Mrs. Yanagi suddenly thought of how doting the Chizuru family was toward Sho, and her expression stiffened in horror. Could they be planning to use Kozue's illness to cause something to happen to him just so they can swap Sho in as your husband instead? Mengyao let out a cold laugh. It's entirely possible. Big Sis is the publicly acknowledged successor of the Yanagi group, so the temptation of that status is immense. If the brother-in-law wasn't obedient enough or refused to secure greater benefits for the Chizuris, they would naturally want to swap him out. With that, Mengyao glanced at her eldest sister. The brother-in-law and that Chizuru Sho are identical twins. Their appearances are almost indistinguishable. Furthermore, Big Sis has maintained a default stance of tacit approval toward Sho's little stunts over the past 3 years, which easily fed the Chizuru family's ambitions. A terrifying, murderous aura instantly flared in Yuka's eyes. They wouldn't dare! Witnessing this, Tsukuran was dumbfounded. They're that vicious? The brother-in-law is their son too, you know. Mengyao gave a soft, dry laugh. Even I, his biological sister-in-law, almost mistook Big Sis for trying to play both sides. Yuka denied Mengyao's assertion. I did nothing of the sort. Looking coldly at Tsukuran, she added, he trusts me completely. As long as I tell him every day that I only love him and harbor zero thoughts about Chizuru Sho, Kozue can be easily coaxed. Tsukuran was left utterly speechless. Wait a minute, I only looked up that tutorial online? Number 2. The elder Mrs. Yanagi wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes and turned her gaze toward Tsukiran. Tsukiran stared at the elder Mrs. Yanagi in absolute shock. What? Why am I the one who has to kneel down? I was just trying to help. Looking as though she were suffering from sudden dizziness, the elder Mrs. Yanagi leaned against her husband's shoulder. You kneel down so I can feel a little better inside. Otherwise, I keep wanting to throw something heavy at you, you rebellious girl. Just what kind of nonsense did you feed her big sister? It's going to be the death of me. Sensing that his wife was feeling unwell, the elder Mr. Yanagi immediately steadied her while casting a stern, freezing glare in Tsukuran's direction. With a heavy thud, Tsukuran flopped to her knees on the floor, consoling herself inwardly. Kneeling is better than getting beaten up, at least. The elder Mr. Yanagi turned his attention to Mengyao. Number 3. How do we crack Hojo Shizuo's mouth open? The reason the elder Mr. Yanagi was discussing this with Mengyao was because she possessed quite formidable methods for dealing with enemies. She was calculating and cunning, whereas Yuka leaned toward brute force, usually opting to crush enemies directly out of the gate. Mengyao curved her lips into a smile. You know Big Sis's reputation as well as I do. If Hojo Shizuo isn't a complete fool, he won't confess a single word. He's convinced that if he tells the truth, his fate afterward will be even worse than it is now. Under those circumstances, no one in their right mind would spill the beans. A trace of derision crossed Yuka's eyes. Naturally, she had her own ways of making Hojo Shizuo talk. Mengyao didn't try to dissuade her eldest sister. Actually, none of those things matter right now. What's important is the brother-in-law's health. Since Hojo Shizuo has shady dealings, let's replace him starting today. Who knows? Changing his attending physician might just cure him outright. Staring hard at Mengyao, Yuka slowly opened her mouth. Are you certain? Let's just swap him for a renowned doctor from the same graduating class who hates Hojo's guts. The Chizuris don't have that kind of weight. The Yanagi family is one of the 4 major clans of the capital, while the Chizuris are tucked away in some backwater province. Just then, the doorbell of the old estate rang, and Steward Soda hurried forward, leading a pale-faced Hojo Shizuo into the living room. Standing before a roomful of Yanagis, Hojo Shizuo felt cold sweat break out across his back. He knew the Yanagi family had caught on, but fortunately, back when the Chizuru family first dragged him into this quagmire, he had already devised a way out. Fixing a glacial stare on Hojo Shizuo, Yuka demanded, Spill it! What have you done in collusion with the Chizuru family, and what did they bribe you with? Don't wait for me to dig it up myself, or I'll turn your entire family upside down. Hojo Shizuo trembled all over. Milady, I am a director you personally promoted. How could I ever collude with the Chizuru family? As for bribes, there was truly nothing of the sort. As for that matter, I was genuinely trapped and tricked by the Chizuras. No one wishes for these 5 years to pass quickly more than I do. Yuka slowly rose to her feet, but the elder Mr. Yanagi immediately pressed a hand down on her shoulder. Looking at Mengyao, he said indifferently, "You question him." Mengyao nodded and turned her gaze to Hojo Shizuo. "President Hojo should be well aware that my brother-in-law's illness recovered long ago, shouldn't he?" Hojo Shizuo was stunned. "The third miss is asking about this?" Fortunately, not daring to hesitate too long, he hastily replied, "Mr. Chizuru's physical condition stabilized 3 years ago. It's just that Milady constantly worried about him, which is why she insisted on having him checked every 6 months." Mengyao blinked softly. Hojo Shizuo's words were true. The moment she finished posing that condition, Hojo Shizuo's expression had visibly relaxed. Running a quick mental deduction, Mengyao continued, "You're still not telling the whole truth, President Hojo. Do you have any idea what happens after today?" A hint of anguish surfaced in Hojo Shizuo's eyes. He looked pleadingly at Yuka. "You should know, milady. Over these past 3 years, I never administered any medication to Mr. Chizuru. In fact, I even advised milady that the semi-annual blood tests were unnecessary. I truly never harbored any malicious intent to harm him." Yuka had already sat back down, completely delegating the questioning authority to Mengyao with no intention of speaking up herself. Hearing Hojo Shizuo's plea, Mengyao smiled faintly. "My big sis planted a wiretapping device in the Chizuru household." Hojo Shizuo's body jerked violently. "What?" Mengyao gave a mocking laugh. "Otherwise, how do you think we suddenly tracked you down? Chizuru sold you out." Hojo Shizuo's heart twisted into a knot of panic, but he fought desperately to control his fear, forcing himself to remain calm. If the Chizuras really exposed him on a wiretap, the third Mrs. opening line wouldn't have been that. Besides, even if the Chizura scandal had blown wide open, he absolutely could not admit that he knew everything. Given Yuka's methods, she would make him wish he were dead. The mere thought of his grandson, who had just turned 3, and his granddaughter studying abroad, made Hojo Shizuo drop straight to his knees on the living room floor. "I, Hojo Shizuo, swear a poisonous oath. I have never colluded with the Chizuru family. If I speak a single word of falsehood, may my entire family die a horrible death." Seeing Hojo Shizuo go so far as to swear such an oath, Mengyao stopped pressing him further and gave a wave of her hand. Responding to the cue, Soda stepped forward and dragged Hojo Shizuo out of the living room. Once the steward closed the door again, Mengyao resumed speaking. "I believe Hojo Shizuo wouldn't dare harm Sho. He certainly knows some of the things the Chizuras did to Sho, but he didn't dare speak out. There's definitely something fishy going on here, whatever secret Hojo Shizuo is guarding, to the point where he'd rather quit being a doctor than spill it. Must be extremely serious." Yuka knew that Mengyao had merely had Soda take Hojo Shizuo outside for the time being. Before Mengyao could voice her plans, an anxious shout from the male family doctor echoed from the stairwell. Yuka sprang up instantly, covering the distance in a few rapid strides to catch me as I walked down the stairs. "You're awake?" I blinked in bewilderment. "Why am I here? Since when do I have the superpower of teleportation?" Yuka uttered an instinctive denial. Mengyao unceremoniously cut off her eldest sister's denial. "You were sleepwalking." Yuka instantly pressed her lips into a thin line, casting a sharp, sideways glance at the loose-lipped Mengyao. Mengyao felt a slight prickle of scalp-tingling tension, but reasoned that as long as Big Sis didn't resort to physical violence, she could handle it. Recovering from my shock, I fixed my gaze on Yuka. "I really was sleepwalking?" She gave a slight nod to comfort me. "It's just that you were overthinking things during the day, which is why at night—" Undeterred by death, Mengyao interrupted her eldest sister's sugarcoating once more. "That's not what the family doctor said." Realizing Yuka was trying to hide it, I instantly flared up and struck her shoulder with my fist. "This is my body! What right do you have to keep me in the dark?" "I want to talk to Mengyao. I don't want to hear a word from you." Complete silence fell over the entire Yanagi household. Everyone stared in unison at the woman who was currently being pinched and scolded, though the elder Mr. and Mrs. Yanagi managed to maintain a semblance of calm. The 2 younger sisters, however, watched with eyes glazed over in sheer fascination. To think there would actually come a day when someone could yell at and hit her without a single word of pushback. Mengyao quickly recovered her composure. Brother-in-law, we only found out tonight when we stopped you just as you went into the kitchen to grab a knife. Big Sis hasn't even had the wounds on her hands bandaged yet. I froze, instinctively lowering my gaze to Yuka's hands. Sure enough, I spotted traces of fresh blood, and a hazy thread of memory suddenly flooded my mind. Seeing that I seemed normal enough at the moment, the elder Mrs. Yanagi felt a heavy stone lift from her chest. Let the family doctor bandage that up for you. Yuka finally yielded, slowly unwrapping the arms that had been looped around her waist. She didn't reject my presence, but as I tried to pry open her clenched palm, she murmured softly, "Goes away. Don't look." Tilting my head slightly, I replied, "The reason I used to cry was because I was terrified of loving you too much. If I don't love you anymore, why on earth would I cry?" Gazing into my eyes, Yuka whispered, "You cried in the back garden tonight." She added, "The pink baby's breath. You planted it to commemorate our wonderful first love." I denied it without a second thought. The flower language for pink baby's breath is, "A love willing to play a supporting role." Who on earth told you it was to commemorate a wonderful first love? Tsukiran, who had just managed to smile beside them, saw her expression instantly undergo a drastic transformation. Suppressing a towering rage, Yuka turned an ice-cold, piercing glare onto Tsukiran. "Tsukiran, you'd better give me a good explanation for why you lied to me." Tsukiran looked on the verge of tears. "Big Sis, when you asked me, didn't I check my phone?" It gave several different meanings. A love willing to play a supporting role, and wonderful first love. No matter how I thought about it, I figured it had to be the last one. I was struck dumb. That flower language for pink baby's breath was Yuka's understanding derived entirely from Tsukiran's explanation? Mengyao cracked a smile, courting death with reckless abandon right beside her eldest sister. So when brother-in-law planted pink baby's breath in the garden to confess his love to Big Sis, he was actually trying to tell her, even if Big Sis doesn't love her, she's still willing to play a supporting role in Big Sis's love story. Tsukiran swallowed hard. When it comes to fearless audacity, no one beats number 3. Yet while Yuka remained silent, she didn't actually explode into a rage. A flash of realization struck Tsukiran. Number 3 knows for a fact that Big Sis won't lose her temper in front of me, which is why she keeps dancing back and forth across Big Sis's bottom line. Ah ha ha ha. Maybe I should push my luck too. Big Sis goes out on her own dates, and yet she's always coming to grill me. I've never even been in a relationship either. I just looked everything up online. Yuka said coldly, "Your racing license for Sector B is suspended." Tsukiran's voice cut off mid-whine. 3 massive question marks materializing across her forehead. Glaring at him with a dark, heavy gaze, Yuka asked, "Did you hear that clearly now?" The female family doctor applied medicine to Yuka's injured palm and wrapped it in several layers of gauze. Yet even watching it made my scalp prickle slightly, as the doctor used rubbing alcohol to disinfect the wound. Just looking at it made it sting. Thinking about drawing blood in my dream already made me feel squeamish, so I had to admit I fell a bit short compared to her. Glancing back at the second miss, whose racing track had just been shut down and looked ready to burst into tears, I suddenly felt that this eccentric Yanagi family had a genuine warmth to it after all. Finishing up the bandage, the female doctor quietly withdrew from the room. Yuka pulled me back into her arms. Just as I was about to struggle free, I lowered my gaze to the faint crimson stain seeping through the pure white gauze on the woman's hand, and decided more pressing matters came first. Looking toward Mengyao, I prompted, "Mengyao, continue. What did the family doctor say about my sleepwalking disorder?" Fixing her gaze on me with pointed significance, Mengyao said, "Brother-in-law developed sleepwalking because of psychological issues. You love Big Sis deeply, but you mistakenly thought the person she loved was Chizuru Sho, which led you to fall into a spiral of self-doubt." I pressed my lips together without denying it. Anyone with eyes could tell how deeply the past me had loved Yuka. Mengyao smiled faintly. "We were hoping brother-in-law would never remember any of it. Big Sis is a total bottleneck. You couldn't pry open her mouth with a saw to save your life. Coupled with the fact that brother-in-law never picked fights with her in the past, Big Sis foolishly thought she was protecting him, only to end up saddling him with such a severe psychological illness. True to form, I picked up on the crucial point. If I'm already clear on my past issues, why keep things locked away and hidden? What gives the Chizuru family the right to manipulate Yuka in the first place? Manhwa glanced at her eldest sister. Actually, 3 years ago, when Big Sis first went to marry into the Chizuru family, it was because brother-in-law was suffering from aplastic anemia. My body suddenly tensed up. Turns out the person who was always treated as a walking blood bank was Chizuru Sho? Were the entries in the minor diary completely wrong, too? Once she had laid out all the inside details, Manhwa offered a playful smile as she watched Yuka glare fixedly at me. Listening to all this, don't you think my big sis was acting like a total fool? I clenched both fists tightly and remained silent. Manhwa tucked away her teasing expression. Brother-in-law, I've always respected you over the past 3 years, but I genuinely never favored your marriage with Big Sis. You're simply too fragile. On the surface, even a simple exchange of glances between you two looked sweet, but the truth is, neither of you understood the other at all. A marriage like that can never last. I still kept silent. Manhwa shrugged her shoulders. Just look at my mom and dad. Now that is what an affectionate couple looks like. Mom gives a single look, and Dad knows whether she's happy or angry. Dad makes a single gesture, and Mom knows where he's aching or sore. Husband and wife who don't understand each other. What kind of marriage is that? For a long stretch, not a single sound stirred the living room of the old Yanagi estate. The elder Mr. Yanagi's gaze shifted slightly, as if he wanted to say something but thought better of it. Having achieved a dual success in romance and career, aside from putting in some effort to win over his wife for over half a year during their courtship, he had never experienced any major trials of the heart and thus lacked the standing to comment. The elder Mrs. Yanagi stayed quiet too, waiting for me to digest everything Manhwa had just revealed. After a long time, Yuka finally tightened her arms around my waist, burying her face against my chest as she murmured in a low voice, "She's wrong. We will last. Even in death, we'll stay together." As I apprehensively listened to the hoarse, romantic declaration whispered against my ear, a sudden, uncontrollable wave of pain spiked simultaneously through my head and heart, causing me to unconsciously blurt out that long-missed form of address. Pulling me even tighter against her, Yuka whispered, "I'm right here. I've always been right here." Shocked back to my senses, I said, "Yuka, let's head back first. I want some quiet time to clear my head." Disregarding the rest of the Yanagi family entirely, Kozue, the elder Mrs. Yanagi, suddenly rose to her feet, stepping forward to block our path. Yuka's voice dropped to a heavy rumble. "As if you need to tell me." Glaring daggers at the rebellious daughter who didn't even know how to properly cherish her own husband, the elder Mrs. Yanagi gently pulled me by the hand instead. "Kozue, don't carry any psychological burdens. President Hojo just said your body has been kept in exceptionally healthy condition over these past 3 years. You'll be completely cured in no time." As for whatever was going on between me and Yuka, the elder Mrs. Yanagi stated firmly, "Even if Kozue decides to divorce Yuka down the road, you're still my son. You can move right back into the old estate, and Mom will protect you for the rest of your life." She certainly wasn't going to let him go back to that wolf den of a Chizuru household after witnessing firsthand what kind of attitude they held toward him. Frowning instantly, Yuka cut in with a cold voice, "Mom, Kozue and I are not getting divorced." The elder Mrs. Yanagi let out a cold snort. She's far too overconfident. She figured out that Kozue loves her deeply, so she acted all high and mighty keeping secrets, thinking a couple of sweet-talked phrases would magically make him happy and wipe away his hurt. Such a fool. A fool who can't even hold on to her own husband. Just as I was about to say something in response to the elder Mrs. Yanagi, Yuka leaned down and pressed a fierce kiss straight to my lips. Before I could even raise a hand to push her away, she turned and strode briskly out of the living room. It wasn't until we cleared the front entrance that it finally dawned on me. That sudden kiss of hers was meant to stop me from making any promises to the elder Mrs. Yanagi. Pulling me along by the hand, Yuka climbed into the car and cast a dark, heavy glance in the direction of Soda and Hojo Shizuo. Soda hurried to the car door, lowering his head to await orders. Go find Yanagi Mangyao and do whatever she says. Yuka delivered the cold command, stepping on the gas and speeding away into the night. Soda immediately turned on his heel, headed back into the living room, and approached the third miss. "Third miss, Milady told me to follow your instructions." Yanagi Mangyao curved the corner of her lips. "This matter is actually quite simple. Lock Hojo Shizuo away for a few days, then go find his son and have him confront Chizuru at the Chizuru household." Soda's gaze flickered slightly. The third miss really is a sly old fox and a master at setting traps. The method was indeed sound. He trusted that Hojo's son would certainly be able to extract the truth from the Chizuris, the secret that both the Chizuru family and Hojo Shizuo were desperately trying to conceal. Soda soon departed from the Yanagi old estate, taking Hojo Shizuo away to be locked up in a mountain villa. Back at the Yanagi old estate, an unknown amount of time passed among the family members. The elder Mrs. Yanagi suddenly broke the silence. "Old man, I feel like Kozue's illness is a bit strange. I find it really hard to believe that the Chizuru family would draw Sho's blood just to treat Kozue. If it were drawing Kozue's blood for Sho, I'd find that much easier to believe." The moment that thought surfaced in her mind, the elder Mrs. Yanagi abruptly stood up. "Do you remember when we were at the hospital back then, and we could never tell Kozue and Sho apart? When they were little, they were both skin and bones with nearly identical facial features, as long as the Chizuru family pulled the strings." Thinking of such a colossal conspiracy, the elder Mrs. Yanagi trembled violently from head to toe. Having weathered countless storms, how could the elder Mr. Yanagi fail to guess what was running through his wife's mind? Everything must be based on evidence. Before we have proof. The elder Mrs. Yanagi gripped her husband's hand tightly, her eyes blazing red. "You go investigate! I don't care what methods you use, you must uncover the truth! If they actually dared to do this, I'll abandon my Buddhist prayers and make sure they rot in hell. I'll go investigate as soon as day breaks. Don't get upset. Your health comes first." The elder Mr. Yanagi soothed her for a long while before her emotions finally stabilized. Mangyao blinked her eyes at that moment, having fully grasped the profound implications behind her parents' exchange. If the Chizuru family really spun such a monstrous lie, they must have covered their tracks flawlessly. No wonder Big Sis was fooled by them. Back then, Big Sis had also gone to the hospital to check the medical records, which was why she ended up poaching Hojo Shizuo as the attending physician. But if the patient listed on the hospital records had been swapped, who on earth from the outside could ever tell the truth? Only the Chizuru family members who tampered with it knew for sure. A playful yet profoundly dark glint shone in Mengyao's eyes. If the Chizuris really swapped the medical records, and the person who was actually sick the entire time was Sho, then the Chizuru family won't have a place left in Tokyo. The next morning, I finished breakfast in a distracted daze. Watching the woman eating with her left hand while her right hand was wrapped in gauze, a pang of guilt prompted me to ask, "Do you want me to help?" After all, she had saved me, and I was certainly not someone devoid of gratitude. Yuka lifted her gaze to look at me gently. "No need. I can use both hands just fine." I let out a huff. "So capable that your husband ended up with a psychological disorder and started sleepwalking." Yuka suffered a brief inward ache, catching the sarcastic bite behind my words. She offered no defense for herself. In truth, whether I scolded her, hit her, threw temper tantrums, or smashed things, she would gladly accept it all. Let all the pain fall on her instead. From now on, he could just focus on being happy. I pushed down the frustration of having my words hit a wall of cotton and got straight to business. "When are you having Sho brought back to the country? I want to meet with him." Yuka lowered the fork she was holding in her left hand. "Arrangements have already been made. We'll make our move in 2 days. Once the Chizuru Group's capital chain collapses and banks refuse to renew their loans, the Yanagi Group's legal department will immediately slap them with a lawsuit. Only when things escalate severely enough will Sho completely abandon them," I sneered. What a refined egoist! And how on earth am I supposed to believe someone like that was ever meant to be my walking blood bag? What a joke! At the time, I hadn't refuted Mengyao's words because empty claims carried no weight. but I would naturally find the evidence to prove that I, Kozue Chizuru, was the one who had always been used as a walking blood bag. With that thought in mind, I headed off to work. The Chizuras probably hadn't left any obvious evidence lying around, so I'd need to go consult with Ren. As I passed by Yuka, she suddenly reached out and gently caught my wrist. I lowered my gaze slightly to look at the seated Yuka. Finally sitting a few centimeters shorter than me, she looked even more stunning than when I had to tilt my head up to look at her. Ren's words suddenly flashed through my mind. A youth well spent is a youth not pent. Have you even looked at what an absolute stunner your wife is? Are you planning to wait until she's 80 before you finally touch her? 3 years of never touching me, although I now understood it was because of my illness, it still drove me up the wall with irritation. If she really loved me, if she truly loved me, wouldn't there have been a moment when she lost control? Out of deliberate mischief, I suddenly broke free from Yuka's grip, raised my arms to hook them around her neck, and bent down slightly to press my lips to hers, aggressively ravaging her soft lips. A flash of profound shock rippled through Yuka's passionate peach blossom eyes, instantly giving way to a deep, surging emotion. Her chest heaved because my soft fingers had slipped straight into her shirt. It was enough to drive someone mad. In Yuka's world of strictly disciplined restraint, nothing could make her blood boil faster than my proactive initiative. But just as she was being stirred, letting out involuntary, muffled sounds from the back of her throat, I abruptly shoved her away. Kozue. Yuka gazed up at me, her moistened, delicate lips faintly trembling. Wiping my mouth, I pressed a finger to Yuka's temple and chuckled softly. Look at you, the almighty President Yanagi. How are you so lacking in self-control? You held back for 3 years. Keep holding back. A hazy realization dawned on Yuka. She quietly bit her lip without speaking. He'll never know. He doesn't need to do any of this. Just one look from him and all her self-control vanishes entirely. This was his first time treating her like this, and she loved it. I thoroughly disliked seeing Yuka like this, so as an act of retaliation, I leaned in and bit down hard on her neck. A moment later, I finally released her. Yuka, we're not going to make it to the end. Yuka watched me in quiet stillness. After learning the truth at the Yanagi estate, I hadn't said a single word to her. In my heart, I was deeply resentful of her past concealment and methods. The Chizuru family had treated me poorly and even tried to harm me. Yet she had helped the Chizuru so much. My silent treatment was the greatest expression of my fury. Perhaps one day, I truly wouldn't want to be with her anymore. It felt as though the version of me who loved her so deeply was truly vanishing. Yuka uttered a low, quiet whisper. If we don't make it to the end, then I'll just reach the end. That soft, self-muttering remark from Yuka caused me to snap upright. What do you mean? I stared down at her. Composing her expression to banish any trace of composure, Yuka gently stroked my cheek. It means nothing. Go do whatever you want to do. After that, she would accept whatever judgment was handed down to her, with the sole exception of a divorce. I pressed my lips together, locked eyes with the woman's calm black gaze for a moment, and turned on my heel to leave without looking back. How can someone be this infuriatingly good at ticking me off? Seething with suppressed anger, I called Ren and scheduled a meeting for noon. Meanwhile, news that Hojo Shizuo had been seized by the Yanagi family had also reached the Chizuru household, brought directly by Hojo's son, Hojo Hitoshi. What did you say? Your dad was snatched by Yuka Yanagi? Hearing those words, Chizuru felt a turbulent storm churn within her chest as she grabbed Hitoshi by the shoulders. Looking frantic, Hitoshi replied, It's true. My dad hasn't been home for 3 days, and his phone has been unreachable the entire time. It wasn't until just now that a nurse from the hospital called to tell me my dad left a note behind in his office for me. Chizuru immediately demanded, What note? Right here, this note. Hitoshi hurriedly fished a slip of paper out of his jacket pocket. Chizuru snatched it away and took a look. 5 stark characters stared back at her. To my son. My dad once told me that if anything ever happened to him, it would definitely be because of Yuka Yanagi, and that he would find a way to leave me a note saying he was fine, telling me to go to the Chizuru family for help if I ever saw it. Chizuru's heart chilled as she cast a razor-sharp glare at Hitoshi. What else do you know? Hitoshi retorted, Big miss, do you really think there's anything I wouldn't know? All your grand ambitions for my dad were built right on the backs of me, my son, and my daughter. Now that my dad has fallen into Yuka Yanagi's hands, I expect the big miss to pull out all the stops and ensure my dad's safety. Of course, Chizuru knew that Hitoshi was thoroughly mediocre in every aspect. He was a complete parasite living off his father. Once Hojo Shizuo went down, Hitoshi could kiss the rest of his life goodbye. Haven't you been watching the news? Although Chizuru understood Hitoshi's stance, her hands were truly tied. The Yanagi group had severed all cooperation with the Chizuru group, completely cutting off their capital chain, while major banks refused all loans. On top of that, the Yanagi legal team had publicly announced they would see them in court. How could she possibly spare the energy to look after his father? Hearing this, Hitoshi's expression instantly turned glacial. My dad also said that if I brought this note to the big miss for help and she refused to lift a finger, he'd only keep his mouth shut for 7 days at most. Chizuru's expression turned instantly ghastly. She had originally thought the matter was completely buried without leaving a single trace of evidence. As long as Kozue Chizuru kept quiet, everything would be seamless. Who could have foreseen that Kozue would suddenly lose his memories and throw a wrench into everything by refusing to recognize anyone, which in turn caused Yuka Yanagi to sniff out that something was wrong. Just because of a simple doghouse incident, Yuka had launched such a ruthless retaliation against the Chizuru family. If that other matter were to leak, wouldn't their entire family be tortured to death by Yuka? The crucial question was, how had Yuka even figured out something was amiss with Hojo Shizuo? Suddenly, Chizuru felt her chest tighten.